The story begins with a fighting scene where the protagonist Yuri is fighting with a monster. The monster is strangely throwing him back, a move at which Yuri keeps laughing and asks what monster, how can he say that? The monster angrily asks what his purpose is for coming here as he arrives suddenly and mercilessly burned his skin. The hero replies, "It is nothing special, it is just that he came without any reason." Hearing this, the monster becomes very ferocious and angrily shouts why he came like that, what a shame it is, and he starts attacking toward him in sudden rage. Deep down, Yuri thought that an enemy like the Dark Lord would understand his feelings, that ultimate power is the root of their destruction. For him, the Dark Lord, feared by many and rejected by all, becoming a monster was a sad thing. He truly believed that the Dark Lord would understand him, but instead, the Dark Lord angrily attacked him with rage, after which Yuri calmly said he would see him in the afterlife, and then Yuri easily killed the Dark Lord, believing it was his final battle. After the Dark Lord was defeated, Yuri obtained a reincarnation crystal, which was ranked SSS. Seeing this, he felt it had been a long time, and he finally realized that the beings who trapped and controlled him were nothing at all. Now, he believed he could finally reincarnate into a future far away from the present time. But in reality, it was only a dream Yuri was having. In truth, his name is Aikawa Yuri. He is just an ordinary office worker who was born in a country called Japan. From the memories of his life, the first time he reincarnated into another world was at the age of 30. In that first life, being able to use magic for the first time in a fantasy world felt incredibly exciting to him. Overall, he was very happy to be able to use magic. Soon, he worked very hard to learn many different spells, and before he even realized it, everyone had already started calling him the Magic Emperor. In his second life, since he had already reached the highest level of magic, he chose to try sword fighting, becoming the strongest swordsman alive and defeating the terrible being people called the Dark Lord. When he once again realized what was happening, everyone started calling him the God of Swords again. But deep inside now, he was very sad, even though many people would see this as a perfect and complete life. However, the truth is not always what it seems to be. Day by day, he kept fighting for the sake of others, yet he could not find even the smallest bit of joy in his life. In the end, people began to see him as a monster, which is why he decided that in his next life, he would live only for himself alone. At the present time, when Yuri wakes up, he confusingly wonders where he is and why it is so dark. Suddenly, something breaks near his body, and when he opens his eyes, he finds himself in a strange place. But first, he wonders who he is and why he slept there. Actually, he cannot remember a single thing at all. Suddenly, he is shocked to see himself in a pond and remembers how he got there, as he grew extremely tired of fighting in countless wars, and that is why he used the reincarnation crystal. Luckily, everything worked out just fine. But at the present time, he is wondering about the place where he is, as it looks like the ruins of a building. Suddenly, he hears someone shouting, asking who he is. When he turns toward that person to look, he becomes stunned, as it is a goblin lord of rank B. There are also goblin lords of rank D and rank E present, so Yuri finally realizes that this is the ruin of a goblin lair. The goblin lord of rank D angrily asks how it is so bold of him to enter their territory and demands to know why he came there. Deep down, he is also tense because he meant no harm to them, since by the time he understood his location, he was already inside their ruins. The Lord of Rank asks if Yuri truly intends to fight all of them, and what difference he can make when he does not even have a weapon. Hearing about the weapon, Yuri suddenly remembers that in his past life people called him the God of Swords because he could use any type of object as a sword. He starts searching for something that he can use as a weapon. Nearby, he finds a wooden stick. The moment he holds that stick, he suddenly sees a notification pop up in front of his eyes, where he gains advanced sword skill just after grabbing the stick. He is stunned to see that the moment he holds this stick, his past experiences start flowing back into him once again now. Soon, the goblin horde starts attacking toward him, but surprisingly, his body moves on its own and defeats one goblin, making him wonder in confusion if his body is acting alone. Soon, all the goblins begin getting defeated by him without effort. He feels surprised but also happy that these familiar feelings are slowly returning to him again. Lastly, the Goblin Lord of rank A orders a retreat, saying the whole group will return later to attack Yuri again. Hearing this, Yuri feels slightly surprised and uneasy. He feels that the memories inside him are warning that he must not let those goblins escape. Yuri quickly asks the Goblin Lord where he is going. The moment he asks this question, he suddenly flashes toward the goblin. At that time, Yuri remembers that when he was the God of Swords, there was a move he often used called Flash. Using that movement, he easily grabs the goblin and defeats it in an instant, after which all the lower-level goblins start running away, making Yuri think there is no way he will let them escape from there. He begins fighting all of them at once and notices that only 4 of them are left. He realizes that if even one escapes and calls for help, things will become troublesome later. Finally, after defeating all the goblins, he asks if that was all the power they had. Suddenly, he receives a notification showing his skills, including the Magic Emperor's memories and the God of Swords memories. Even his active swordsman skills are at an advanced level, while the Magic Emperor and God of Swords skills are both ranked SSS. He realizes that just by holding a wooden stick, he was able to gain advanced sword skills, which must be because of his passive skill, the memory of the God of Swords. Being both the God of Swords and the Magic Emperor, he guesses that his experience carries over between lives. Suddenly, he remembers something important, wondering if having both abilities at the same time is extremely rare even in the present world, as the blood flowing within him belongs to a magic swordsman. After defeating all the goblins, Yuri confusedly wonders what he should do now, as his only new companion is a slime. Actually, after defeating those goblins, he took many items from them, including dried meat, some supplies, and also one sword. Seeing the sword, he again wonders if it can even be used anymore, as it looks almost no different from the stick he used earlier. Suddenly, the screen beeps again as he receives a notification for a new skill called Analyze. Seeing this, he wonders what it is. So, without thinking too much, he decides to try it out. The moment he uses the new skill, he is surprised as he can see the sword's abilities, showing it is a rank F bronze sword, which makes Yuri very happy. It also turns out to be a very useful skill for him. However, it is also a bit annoying, as there are only grass and trees around him. So he thinks it would have been nice if there was at least some clue pointing toward a nearby town. At the same time, a slime comes toward him. Seeing this, Yuri confusingly wonders if he should kill it, because of which the slime becomes tense. At the same time, Yuri also thinks that it does not seem hostile toward him, so it is better for him not to kill it. Soon, he thinks of something and tries to give a piece of meat to the slime. Seeing this, the slime starts munching on it happily. So Yuri smiles, realizing the slime is really not an enemy after all. At that moment, his status screen shows that he gains a new advanced level skill known as Taming. Yuri feels happy about getting the Taming skill, but he is not happy with the status screen itself, as it feels very strange because he cannot touch it and cannot use it as a shield at all. Soon, he notices that the Taming skill allows him to communicate with monsters. Still, he starts walking forward to find a new place, but the slime begins following him from behind, making him wonder if it is just his thought or if it truly does not want to part ways. He realized that for some reason he could understand the slime's feelings because of the taming skill. So, he bent down toward the slime and said that for the time being, its name would be Lime, and then asked if Lime wanted to come with him. Lime happily jumped into the air, clearly agreeing with his question. Seeing this, Yuri wondered that he was not sure in what situation a slime could be useful, but without any doubt, the first companion he gained in this world was the slime. In the next scene, Yuri was very tense because he was unable to start a fire using a stick. From his memories of a past life, he thought that everyone made fire by doing something like this, but in the present time, he was not able to do it. Finally, after trying many times, he managed to make fire. From this, he gained a new skill known as Advanced Fire Magic. The slime also returned with some items Yuri had asked it to bring from the forest. Yuri gave a piece of meat to the slime as a reward for its work. The slime happily jumped toward him and started munching on it. Later, Yuri cooked some meat over the fire and began eating it, then asked if the slime also wanted to eat. The slime agreed. Yuri smiled and gave some meat to it as well. Suddenly, they heard strange sounds coming from the air. Seeing this, Yuri confusedly asked what it was. He realized that something was running toward him at full speed. He then saw a wolf running away after being scared by a monster. Seeing the monster, Yuri realized it was dangerous. Still, he analyzed it and found that it was a monster named Shadow, which was weak against magic. The one running ahead was known as Poncho Panther, a male of the lycanthrope race. Yuri wonders if he should save that panther person or not. Soon, he thinks, what if the panther is running only to survive and not for gaining any skill? So he runs toward the panther to ask him directly. The panther gets stunned seeing Yuri beside him and nervously asks when he came there. Yuri apologizes for scaring him by appearing so suddenly. From Yuri's stare, the panther becomes tense and confusingly asks what Yuri really wants. Yuri asks if the panther truly needs his help. The panther shouts and asks if Yuri cannot tell just by looking and begs him to do something fast. Yuri, without thinking, uses flame bullet, and the monster gets defeated instantly. When the panther sees the explosion, he gets shocked, and Yuri apologizes for causing such a blast because he used too much power. The panther starts running again, shouting "Monster, monster," as he thinks Yuri himself is a monster, but Yuri runs after him and asks him to wait, saying he has many things to ask. The panther gets even more shocked, wondering when Yuri caught up so fast. Yuri is actually happy that he finally met someone, so he cannot let this source of information escape. Again and again, he tries to stop him by asking to talk, saying "excuse me," and calling out loudly, but the panther stays fully tense and finally gets so scared that he faints. When Yuri wakes him up, the panther apologizes and asks Yuri to spare his life. The scene shifts to later, where Yuri asks if the panther was really not running without reason. The panther replies that he was obviously running to save his life and barely escape death. What else could it be? Yuri replies that he thought the panther was running to fulfill a condition to gain a new skill. The panther gets shocked and shouts that skills cannot be gained so easily like that. Normally, someone must train for many years to learn even one skill. Hearing this, Yuri realizes that this is how the world truly works. He understands that it is thanks to the memories of his past lives that he learns skills so easily. Seeing Yuri's reaction, the panther gets confused and nervously says that from his expression, Yuri truly seems unaware of this. He then asks who Yuri really is, saying that he has been an adventurer for nearly 10 years, but this is the first time he has ever met someone as powerful as Yuri. Yuri finally realizes that in the meantime, he had not understood that his magic is top class in the present world. He had no idea about the world's standards or the true level of magical power here. First, he asks Panther why he was wandering in the forest at night like this. Panther responds that he was set up. Yuri, confused, wonders what a setup means. Panther explains that he was part of a party led by a man named Jack. They had a fair amount of trust between them, but at one moment, when facing a powerful enemy, Jack's attitude changed. Jack saved himself and did not care about the others. Panther tried to ask everyone to wait for him, but they did not. He even cried, asking them to wait, but Jack smiled and ignored him completely. Panther says that to save the party, or really to save himself, Jack used him as a decoy. Yuri listens and finally understands that this is what had happened. Suddenly, Yuri looks up at the sky, which surprises Panther. Yuri asks if the strong monster Panther mentioned is something like the creature flying above them. When Panther looks up, he is stunned to see a cockatrice of rank B. Panther starts overreacting, but Yuri tells him not to. Deep down, Yuri tries hard to pretend he hasn't noticed it, but he knows the cockatrice has seen them by now. Moreover, it looks like the cockatrice was planning to attack them while they slept. Without waiting, the cockatrice suddenly rushes toward them. Yuri wonders what he should do, as fire magic might not hit it at its current speed. Then he remembers the sword he found in the Goblin lair. Seeing the sword in Yuri's hand, Panther exclaims in surprise, asking what Yuri really thinks he can do with that piece of junk. But the moment the cockatrice comes close, Yuri instinctively slashes with the sword, creating a huge wave of air that throws the cockatrice back above them. Panther is completely stunned by what he sees and tensely asks what just happened. Meanwhile, Yuri gains a new skill called Magic Enhancement, but in the process, his sword shatters into pieces. Yuri feels disappointed as he put so much effort into getting the sword, yet now it's broken because he whacked it instead of slicing properly. When Yuri thinks of asking Panther more questions, he turns to speak, but surprisingly, Panther is gone. Yuri wonders where the panther went, as he had hoped Panther could lead him to the nearest town. This scene then shifts to the next day, where Yuri is harvesting the cockatrice while the slime watches him. It is taking him so much time that the slime starts getting bored by it. So Yuri asks the slime to wait a little longer. After killing the cockatrice, he had dragged the body back to the place where he first saw it. Now he is carefully harvesting the corpse. He thinks that if he cooks the meat using fire magic, he can store it as emergency rations. However, after last night's fight, his sword broke, so he has been cutting the body using a sharp stone since morning. He finally finishes the task after a long effort. He also recalls that when he woke up in the morning, he saw a new skill on his screen. He gained a skill called non-elemental magic, which is at beginner level. He realizes that as long as he keeps working with this body, he will naturally gain new skills. He does not know much about this new skill yet, but he is sure there will be time to use it later. While cutting the cockatrice, he finds a rank B fire magic stone. Seeing this, he becomes happy, thinking it will sell for a high price once he reaches a town. Suddenly, the slime reacts strongly to the stone, which makes Yuri ask if the slime wants it. The slime happily agrees, so Yuri decides to give it to the slime, since there is no guarantee he would get a good price for it anyway. The moment the slime eats the firestone, it starts absorbing the magic inside it. Yuri watches in confusion, but suddenly, to his surprise, the slime grows much larger than before. At first, Yuri is not happy, as it only seems to have grown bigger. He wonders what use that is. But then the slime starts acting strangely. To Yuri's shock, the slime transforms into a cockatrice. Yuri is amazed to see that the slime can now change its form into other monsters. To his even greater surprise, the slime starts flying in its cockatrice form. Yuri finally realizes that the slime is not just copying appearances, as it can perfectly mimic the bones and muscles of the original monster. Lime comes back toward Yuri and says something to him. Yuri is confused at first and does not know what to do, but soon he realizes that Lime is asking him to ride on him. When Yuri climbs on Lime's back, he feels amazed, as the ride feels surprisingly smooth and exciting. Moreover, he feels happy, thinking that with this, he should be able to reach a village much more quickly than before. While flying to move to a new region, Yuri asks his slime if it needs a break, but the slime refuses, so he decides to keep the speed up, thinking that this way they will reach the town soon. After some minutes, he finally sees a town in front of him and feels a little happy, but he soon realizes they cannot enter the town like this, as he is sure people would be terrified by the cockatrice form of the slime. So he asks the slime to land just before the town for a moment. There, he asks the slime if it can return to its original form. The slime agrees and starts shrinking down. To Yuri's surprise, the slime shrinks to the size of a bottle cap and sits on Yuri's shoulder. Yuri is amazed that the slime can become this small, which feels very convenient. So he asks the slime to stay inside his pocket for a while. After that, he walks toward the town and enters it, learning that it is called the trading town Rial. But after entering, he feels surprised because the town looks very gloomy and sad. Suddenly, he sees a girl shouting that the prices are unbelievably cheap and that people should come and see for themselves. To Yuri's surprise, the girl announces that cold water is only 300 gil for now. Feeling thirsty since he had not drunk anything since yesterday, Yuri decides to buy some water. He tells the girl that he wants some. The girl explains that there are 3 glass sizes, large, medium, and small, and asks which one he wants. Seeing them, Yuri feels relieved, but he is unsure about the value of the world's currency. So he thinks the loot taken from the goblins should be enough, and asks her to sell him as much as possible with the money he has. In response, the girl gives him only half of a small glass of water. Yuri is shocked and sighs, realizing how expensive it is. The girl then comments that it seems like he came from outside this region. Yuri points toward a well nearby and asks why water is still so costly. The girl explains that in Rial, the sun shines all day, which causes water prices to rise daily. Yuri finally understands. Laughing proudly, the girl adds that thanks to these conditions, people like her who can use water magic have a perfect chance to earn a lot of money. After this, Yuri even notices that people are truly buying those glasses of water at very high prices. So Yuri finally understands that this is the reason why the people in the town look so tired and weak. But the moment Yuri gulps down the water, he feels unsatisfied, as the dryness in his throat does not lessen at all. Suddenly, to his shock, he gains water magic at an advanced level. The girl again asks what is going on with him, saying that the small cup was clearly not enough for him. Then the girl makes an offer to Yuri, saying that his clothes look quite strange, so she offers to give him the largest glass of water in exchange for his clothes. She asks if Yuri does not think she is being very generous. But Yuri refuses the offer, thanks her, and starts walking away. The girl looks confused, and Yuri explains that he has a solution for the town's water shortage. The girl is shocked and asks what Yuri just said. Deep down, Yuri knows that this is the first and last time he will ever need to buy water in his life. He then uses water magic and releases it toward the well. Everyone is stunned and starts shouting water, 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 as they cannot believe they are seeing water so freely. People begin rushing to bring buckets to collect the water. The girl is completely shocked and shouts at Yuri, asking what he is doing. Yuri nervously replies that, as she can see, he is simply using water magic, which she can also use, right? The girl is left shocked and tense, unable to respond. Seeing her reaction, Yuri is also surprised, as he thought she would be happy about it. 2 days have passed, but Yuri is very tired of eating plain cooked rice, because after traveling such a long distance to reach the town, he now has no money left. So Yuri goes to a man named Alex. He asks him for a job and asks if he is still hiring workers. Alex says that finding a job for him is fine, but sadly, he is not in the right mood right now. Yuri gets confused, so Alex points toward a place where a huge rock is lying. Alex explains that this rock is a big problem. He is a carpenter, and they were supposed to build a house on that empty land, but 2 days ago, this hard rock suddenly fell there, forcing him to stop all work. If this situation continues, the noble who gave him the task will become very angry. Because of this, Alex says it would be better for Yuri to ask someone else for a job. Hearing this, Yuri asks that if the rock is removed, Alex will introduce him to a job, right? Alex is shocked and asks what Yuri just said. Yuri smiles and replies that it sounds fair enough. Yuri then walks toward the rock and gently touches it, using magic enhancement to lower its strength. Alex asks in confusion what Yuri is doing. Yuri replies that it is something like a spell. Alex looks puzzled by the word spell, but Yuri does not explain further. After weakening the rock at one spot, Yuri thinks it is enough and asks everyone to stay back, warning that it might get a little dangerous. Alex angrily asks what he means by dangerous and tells Yuri to leave if he is just fooling around. Suddenly, to everyone's shock, Yuri strikes the rock, and it shatters into many pieces. Everyone is left completely stunned, asking what just happened, amazed by how incredible it was. Alex says that breaking such a huge rock in just a second is truly unbelievable, which makes Yuri confused, as he wonders if this world does not know about magic enhancement at all. Alex then happily says that they are lucky to have met him, and now they can finally continue their work. Alex thanks Yuri sincerely. After that, Alex asks if Yuri was looking for a job, and since he is clearly very strong, why not try becoming an adventurer? Or else, Alex could also teach him carpenter work. Yuri remembers adventurers from his past life, where adventurers are people who earn money by completing requests from a guild. These requests range from finding a lost cat to defeating dangerous monsters. In short, an adventurer is very different from a sorcerer or a swordsman. He does not have to follow anyone's orders and can live freely. Because of this, Yuri decides to become an adventurer. Suddenly, Alex offers to take him to the guild himself. Yuri asks in surprise if Alex can really do that, and starts bowing repeatedly, thanking him for his kindness. Alex looks confused and tells Yuri that if he wants to be an adventurer, he should stop speaking so formally. Yuri asks why. Alex explains that Yuri should not underestimate the life of an adventurer. That is why adventurers usually do not speak politely like that, especially with a face like his. Also, Yuri is very strong, so he cannot keep bowing and acting overly polite, or he will never move forward in life. Hearing this, Yuri extends his hand for a handshake and says that from now on he will speak more casually. Alex laughs and praises Yuri for understanding. After some time, Alex drops Yuri at the Adventurers Guild and leaves. Yuri walks toward the guild gate, thinking that many things happen to reach this place, but now his new journey in this entirely new world truly begins. Finally, after his reincarnation, he was moving forward to become an adventurer, and his new life was about to start. After entering the Adventurers Guild, Yuri was very surprised because the guild looked amazing and exciting. He couldn't explain why, but the atmosphere felt strangely familiar to him. Soon, some men approached him and asked if he was a newbie, to which Yuri nodded and replied with a simple yes. Those men said they were looking for a porter and asked if he wanted to join them for a task. They even mentioned that the reward would be shared equally among all of them. One of them added that this was not an offer he would always get, so he could earn much more than taking a request alone. The two men started insisting that Yuri join them and casually pressured him to agree immediately. They even began acting touchy, trying to force Yuri to accept without thinking. But Yuri finally understood why Alex had warned him not to underestimate the adventurer's life. He shook hands with one of the men and thanked him politely, though firmly. Suddenly, Yuri became serious and said that, with all due respect, he refused their offer completely. The other adventurers were shocked by his handshake, which was unexpectedly strong and rough. Deep down, Yuri had decided that in this life, he would live by his own strength and never be controlled by anyone. As he walked away, he apologized to the men, but they still looked puzzled, wondering what had just happened. Meanwhile, at the administration desk, a girl named Tiffany Grace welcomed Yuri warmly. Yuri told her that he wanted to work as an adventurer, so Tiffany asked if he wanted to register officially. But to do that, Yuri needed to show what kind of experience he had already gained. Confused, Yuri asked what kind of experience she meant. Tiffany explained that the rules to register had become stricter recently, and they would not accept anyone without prior experience. He would have to write down some of his achievements to prove his skills. Yuri thought that, although he had been the magic emperor and the god of swords in his previous life, he had no evidence to convince them. Suddenly, Tiffany added that they would also accept anyone with rare skills if he had them. Yuri wondered about the word skills and thought that maybe his analysis or enhancement magic could count, since he had been in this world for only 2 days and didn't know what was common or rare. Tiffany watched him thinking deeply and became a little confused. Yuri finally said that he might not have any rare skills at all. Tiffany sighed and explained that if that was true, it would be very hard for them to accept him. At that time, Yuri remembered Alex's words. An adventurer is someone who can come and go freely, and anyone can register. He was about to ask Alex about it today. Suddenly, someone came out from the main office and asked what was happening. Tiffany addressed him as Mr. Galeo. Galeo was a human, 41 years old. Tiffany explained everything to him. When Galeo understood the situation, he started shouting, asking how they could accept someone like Yuri, as it could seriously affect the guild's reputation. Tiffany agreed with Galeo but added that they couldn't just let him leave. Finally, Galeo decided to show Yuri something. When Yuri approached the machine, he was surprised and tensely asked what it was. Tiffany explained that the machine was called a magic meter. It was a device that measured a person's abilities and converted them into a number. She said Yuri only needed to add his magic power into it, and the device would show a relative score automatically. If the number was over 30, it meant he was suitable to be an adventurer. Over 50 showed talent, and over 100 meant Yuri could register immediately. Everyone else started talking excitedly as Yuri was about to try the magic meter. Seeing everyone's faces, Yuri realized that all the groups here were definitely competitive, and only the strongest could survive. In short, it was clear that everyone was trying to stand out as much as possible. Yuri found it very interesting and asked if the device would break if the measurement went over 100. Tiffany smiled and laughed, saying there was no problem at all. She explained that the magic meter could go up to 9,999, so Yuri didn't need to worry. Moreover, he didn't have to concern himself about it breaking under any circumstance. Galeo told Yuri to worry as much as he liked and asked if he shouldn't try to get over 100 first before saying such things. Yuri replied that he would definitely try it now. The moment he transferred his energy to the machine, a bright light appeared, surrounding it. Everyone was shocked, wondering what was happening. They saw the team meter rising higher and higher, reaching 3,000, and it was still increasing. Tiffany tensely asked what was going on. Suddenly, in a few seconds, the machine burst apart. Everyone was stunned and shocked, unable to believe what had just happened. Yuri nervously apologized for breaking the machine. Tiffany was in complete despair and disbelief, saying this couldn't possibly happen. Meanwhile, Galeo was holding a part of the machine, thinking that what had happened was unbelievable, and that no person like Yuri could exist in the present world. Yuri curiously asked if he could become an adventurer now. Galeo looked at him tensely and said he was qualified for the competition. He then told Yuri to follow him. Yuri was confused, wondering what competition this was, since they had said that over 100 points meant he could become an adventurer. Still, he decided to follow Galeo. On the way, Galeo mentioned that the official competition was about to start in a few minutes. Yuri remembered that the carpenter had said his last suggestion was 10 years ago, so he wondered if the rules had changed. Galeo then opened a door in front of Yuri and looked at him curiously. Finally, Yuri was about to participate in a mysterious competition that he knew nothing about. Yuri only knew that he had to pass this test to finally become an adventurer. The moment Galeo opened the door, Yuri saw an open field where the final examination was going to take place. He also noticed many other adventurers already present, meaning he would have to compete with them. Galeo told everyone to get ready, as the examination would start in 5 minutes. Yuri realized that the bearded man would also be judging the test. He felt tense because Galeo didn't look very strong, and he wondered if judging by him would be fair. But soon, Yuri reminded himself that he couldn't judge a book by its cover. In his previous life, he had learned that subjectivity is a person's biggest enemy. Suddenly, a girl named Phil Arnett approached him. She greeted him warmly and said she knew it was his first time taking an examination like this. She told him that he could call her Phil. Yuri agreed and introduced himself, mentioning that it was his first time taking the examination. When Phil heard his name, she acted as if she had never heard it before, which Yuri found very strange, since no one around her had a name like that. He was surprised because he had thought adventurers would be like Alex or the others in the guild auditorium. But he soon realized that things were not always as he imagined. While Phil prepared for the exam, Yuri asked if she had participated in it before. Phil laughed and said this was the 7th time she would take part. Yuri asked in confusion why she was taking it for the 7th time. Was she a test maniac? Phil laughed again and said it was obvious. She had failed all the previous contests. Seeing Phil look a little sad, Yuri realized that, according to her, the path to becoming an adventurer was difficult, and the competition was far different from what the carpenter had described. Phil added that the exam had become even harder since they changed the examiner to the old bearded man. Yuri felt he would need to be very careful. He also wondered curiously what the bearded man would do. Yuri remembered that it was the old man who had requested the use of the magic meter, so maybe listening to Phil wasn't a bad idea after all. Suddenly, Galeo announced that it was time for the examination to officially begin. The first round was swordsmanship, and the rule was simple: whoever could impress him with their skills would pass. Galeo asked with a smile if it really wasn't simple at all. He then called the first contestant to step forward and fight him. As the fight began, the participant tried vigorously to land hits on Galeo, but Galeo easily blocked every attack. Everyone was amazed at how impressive his defense was. At first, they thought he wasn't too extraordinary, but suddenly, to their surprise, Galeo moved as if dodging attacks was his daily work, effortlessly avoiding every strike. After blocking a powerful attack, he asked his opponent where their vigor was. The opponent aggressively rushed at Galeo again. At that moment, Yuri used his analyze skill to check Galeo's sword. He saw that Galeo was using a soft sword of rank B, while the opponent had a bronze sword of rank F. Yuri realized that the sword's strength was relatively equal, but because of the sword's quality, Galeo could easily win. After defeating the first opponent, Galeo called the next contestants one by one, but first he asked Yuri to step forward. Yuri was confused, wondering why number 2 wasn't next. Then he grew tense as he realized he hadn't brought a sword with him. It was a swordsmanship test, and he had no weapon. Panicked, he asked Phil what would happen if a contestant forgot their sword. Phil became tense and started acting strangely, which made Yuri realize the situation was bad. Suddenly, Yuri remembered the last participant who had lost to Galeo. He approached him and asked if he could help. The man asked confusedly, "What?" Yuri pointed to the sword and asked if he could borrow it for a few minutes. The man agreed, but asked why Yuri wanted to use such a broken sword. Yuri thanked him, took the sword, and walked onto the battlefield. Seeing this, the other participants were shocked, wondering if Yuri would really fight with a broken sword. Galeo laughed and asked if that wasn't a clever choice of weapon. He even warned Yuri that if anything happened, he would be fully responsible. Yuri replied calmly that Galeo didn't need to worry and urged him to start. Galeo grew fierce and aggressively rushed toward Yuri to attack. Even with Galeo rushing toward him, Yuri calmly stood without doing anything. Everyone else was shocked, wondering what Yuri was trying to do, since Galeo's attack was about to hit him cleanly. But the moment Galeo came close, Yuri looked at him fiercely. Galeo froze in surprise and shouted, asking what was happening. Yuri remembered that not only humans but also animals sometimes freeze when they are frightened. He asked if Galeo was okay, noticing from his expression that he wasn't well at all. Galeo grew furious and attacked again, but Yuri used a flash movement and vanished easily from in front of him. Galeo was confused, looking around, trying to find him. Suddenly, he heard Yuri's voice from behind, asking if he really wanted to continue. Shocked, Galeo dropped his sword, admitting defeat. Everyone was amazed, seeing Yuri defeat such a formidable old man. Yuri finally felt happy, knowing he had cleared the examination and become an adventurer. Phil was fully impressed by him. Afterwards, the swordsmanship test examiner was replaced because Mr. Galeo had fallen ill, allowing everyone else to pass much more easily. After clearing the first round, everyone congratulated each other. At that moment, Yuri asked how long it would take for the second round to begin. The examiner replied that it would take about 10 minutes. Yuri then thought that the first round was over, despite some issues. Now he only needed to clear the second round to officially become an adventurer. Soon, Phil came up to Yuri and started crying, saying she had finally passed the first round. Seeing her like that, Yuri congratulated her, but Phil said it was all because of him. She explained that without him she wouldn't have been able to pass so easily. Yuri asked in confusion why she was thanking him. Phil said that after Yuri cleared the first round, the examiner suddenly started feeling sick. Because of that unexpected situation, the contest couldn't continue, and everyone passed the first round. Hearing this, Yuri wondered how she could even call that a proper pass. Still, Phil warned him to be careful in the second round, as rumors said it would be a magic test. The examiner was said to be none other than Magnificros. Soon, Magnus arrived and asked if they should move on to the next contest. Seeing Magnus, Yuri felt that his chances of passing were slowly decreasing. The scene then shifted to the practice area in the guild's basement. Magnus announced that he would explain the rules of the second round. He activated something, and a strange object appeared. Pointing to it, Magnus said that contestants could only use magic. Whoever could break the globe before sunset would pass the round. He then asked if the rules were simple enough. Seeing the globe, Yuri realized that this round seemed easier than he had expected. While some thought the test looked easy, the other contestants appeared terrified for some reason. Suddenly, Magnus shouted Yuri's name, thanked him for taking care of his brother in the last round, and said that this time Yuri would not get any such chance. He added that he would make Yuri feel the same way now. Hearing this, Yuri realized that the previous examiner and this judge were brothers, known as the Figaro brothers. As Magnus spoke loudly, everyone became tense, unsure of what to do next. Yuri quietly asked Phil why everyone looked so shocked, since the test seemed simple. Phil nervously shouted that he was wrong and said that everyone believed this test was impossible from the very beginning. Looking at her expression, Yuri understood that she was not lying. He then wondered if the object was made of some special material. Soon, one contestant tried attacking it with a fireball, but nothing happened. Others used fireballs, wind magic, and ice needles, yet none of them worked. Everyone started saying that it was impossible, as they couldn't even damage it from a distance. Magnus walked toward Yuri and asked why he was just standing there and not using his magic. Yuri stayed silent. Magnus mocked him, saying that since Yuri focused on swordsmanship, he must not have practiced magic at all. He laughed and asked if defeating his brother had made Yuri happy. Magnus then declared that he was the one in charge now, and if Yuri failed, everyone would fail. Laughing loudly, he asked why Yuri was still quiet. At that moment, Yuri calmly released a small fireball, using very little magic. In the next instant, not only the object, but the entire area around it was destroyed in a single moment. Everyone was shocked, wondering what had just happened. Magnus sighed and said he never imagined he would witness the legendary Inferno in an examination match. Hearing this, Yuri became confused, as it was nothing like that. The magic he used was just a simple fireball. He had even fired it randomly, so the power should have been much lower. Yuri thought Magnus must be mistaken, so he asked if that was enough. Magnus suddenly bowed in front of Yuri and apologized for his mistake. Yuri remained confused, unsure why Magnus was acting this way. Still, he calmly asked whether he had passed or not. Magnus sighed and said that everyone had passed along with Yuri. Hearing this, everyone began celebrating, knowing they were finally going to become adventurers. Many of them praised Yuri for being so powerful. Yuri replied that it was nothing compared to his previous life. Phil asked in confusion what he meant by previous life. Yuri realized he had said something unnecessary, so he avoided answering her. Phil laughed and said that Yuri was a very strange person. The scene then shifted to the hall of the Adventurers Guild, where Tiffany congratulated Yuri for passing the test and handed him his adventurer's license. Seeing this, Yuri smiled, as he had finally become an adventurer. For now, he was only F rank, so he would raise his rank by completing quests. Tiffany explained that if Yuri wanted to take a quest, he needed to stay in the guild for a moment after accepting it. Before she could finish speaking, Phil suddenly rushed toward Yuri and hugged him with so much force that both of them rolled into a nearby wall. Yuri was confused, wondering what was happening. Phil cried while thanking him for helping her pass the exam. After Yuri cleared the test, the judges assumed no one else would pass and decided to change the rules. Because the difficulty was lowered, more than half of the applicants passed. Even so, Phil had tried her best until the end. Now, she happily thanked Yuri, as she barely managed to pass because of him. Suddenly, Phil touched Yuri's chest and froze. She stood up and nervously asked if Yuri was a girl. Yuri replied that it wasn't what she was thinking, and then asked Lime to come out. When Lime popped out of his pocket, Phil stared at the slime in amazement. Yuri told her that its name was Lime, and that a few things had happened, making them friends. Phil shouted loudly, asking if Yuri could also tame monsters. Everyone nearby heard her and started staring at him. Yuri became nervous and told her it wasn't like that, asking her to lower her voice. Suddenly, a man nearby said that Yuri had simply raised the slime and that it wasn't such a big deal. He told everyone to calm down, saying the noise would stop soon. The adventurer introduced himself as Jack Barbell and laughed, saying he wasn't angry. Hearing the name, Yuri remembered that Panther had once mentioned being stabbed by someone named Jack. Phil asked if Yuri was okay, and Yuri stood up, saying he was fine. Deep down, he felt something was off, but he decided not to think too much about Jack. Even though the pay wasn't much, the guild still provided them with a salary. Phil then suggested they find a place to celebrate becoming adventurers. Yuri agreed, and they went out to celebrate together. The scene shifted to the next morning, when Phil rushed to Yuri's room to greet him. The moment she entered, she screamed in shock, asking what kind of bed that was. In truth, Yuri was sleeping on top of the slime. Yuri explained that the bed at the inn was too uncomfortable, so he had asked Lime to become a bed for him. With shining eyes, Phil asked if she could touch the slime. Yuri agreed, but she suddenly acted strangely and jumped onto Lime with excitement. Seeing this, Yuri wondered why she hadn't used that much energy during the exam. Phil was enjoying Lime's soft body when Yuri asked why she had come to see him. Phil explained that the guild in this town had something called an underground examination. After hearing her out, Yuri understood that, according to her, their current status in the guild was only that of apprentices. Because of this, if they didn't level up, their licenses could be taken away at any time. Yuri realized that he would have to take another test. Phil said she was going to find out more about the exam and asked if Yuri wanted to come with her. Yuri agreed, but asked her to wait for a moment, as he needed to do something first. He opened the window and noticed a tree nearby. As soon as he saw it, he used a flame bullet and fired toward the tree. To his surprise, a person hiding inside fell to the ground. It turned out there wasn't just one person, but more than 3. They were shocked, unable to understand how Yuri had spotted them from 100 meters away. As they tried to run, Yuri used his ability to see what they were holding. He noticed a rank D telescope and realized they had been spying on him. Phil asked in confusion what was wrong. Yuri replied calmly that it was nothing, saying he was just killing some insects outside. Deep down, Yuri felt irritated, as being watched like this annoyed him greatly. He wondered who would try to spy on him and whether they were after his power. Phil told Yuri to hurry up or she would leave without him. Yuri agreed and followed her. In the next scene, Yuri and Phil were wandering through a forest. A rabbit was quietly watching them, and Lime suddenly stared at it aggressively, causing the rabbit to freeze in fear. The rabbit's strange behavior caught Yuri's attention, so he asked if something was wrong. Lime only laughed, acting as if nothing had happened. Phil said that Yuri was very lucky because herb gathering quests were always popular and got accepted immediately. In fact, herb quests were among the least dangerous missions, with very little risk to life. That was why adventurers rushed to take them as soon as possible. Because of this, Yuri had even lined up early at the guild before it opened. As they walked, Yuri asked Phil if they were heading the right way. Phil looked confused and asked what he meant by the path. Yuri said that if their mission was to gather herbs, wouldn't it be faster to go through the eastern forest? Phil realized he was right, but suddenly started making strange expressions. She warned Yuri seriously that they should never enter the eastern forest, even if they got lost. Yuri asked why. Phil repeated that no matter what happened, they must not go there, because the eastern forest had monsters that F-rank adventurers like them could never face. Yuri then remembered that when he was reincarnated, he had woken up deep inside the eastern forest. Thinking back, he felt that the goblin lord he had fought was actually weak, and he wondered if he had just been lucky to survive. Phil added that the forest was also known as a dark magic area filled with powerful monsters. Yuri agreed, and casually mentioned that cockatrices lived there as well. Phil nodded, saying cockatrices were terrifying creatures, but then suddenly paused and asked what Yuri had just said. Yuri replied calmly that he mentioned it because he had killed one before. Phil burst out laughing and said Yuri was definitely funny, but she wouldn't fall for such jokes, no matter how silly she might be. After that, they continued deeper into the forest. When they reached a certain spot, Phil said this area of the northern forest was perfect for gathering herbs used in healing and antitoxin potions. Most of the herbs there were linen grass and lococo grass. However, when she started searching, she couldn't find a single herb. She was shocked, staring at the empty ground, wondering how it was possible that not even one herb was growing there. Suddenly, Jack arrived with his friends and said it was unfortunate for newbies like them because they had already harvested all the herbs in the area. Jack laughed mockingly, saying that whoever worked faster was the real winner. Yuri recognized him as the same man from before. Jack walked closer and asked if they only had temporary licenses for now. Yuri agreed. Jack took out some herbs and told Phil that they had more than enough, so he would share some with them. Phil happily agreed and reached out to take them. Suddenly, Jack dropped the herbs on the ground and crushed them under his feet. He sneered and asked if she really thought he would give them anything. He called her stupid and asked why he would ever share herbs with newcomers like them. Jack mocked her again, asking if she truly believed people in this world were kind. He said the world was about survival of the fittest, especially for adventurers. He claimed he could do whatever he wanted, even steal other people's work. If they understood that, they should leave at once. Yuri stood there, unsure what to do, as he saw Phil looking hurt and sad. Phil muttered that those people were truly cruel, and after hearing Jack's words, she sadly felt that he might be right. The moment Phil turned back, she was stunned to see Yuri standing calmly. She shouted, asking why he was so calm, saying that because of those people, they might lose their licenses. Yuri simply called out to Lime. As soon as he said Lime's name, the slime grew larger, reaching his size. Phil was shocked and amazed as she stared at Lime in confusion. Suddenly, Lime began to wobble and split into thousands of tiny pieces that rushed into the forest. Phil asked Yuri in confusion what those things were. Yuri smiled and said that he couldn't tell herbs apart, so he asked if she could teach him. Phil smiled and agreed. While Lime searched for herbs, Phil began teaching Yuri how to identify them. She also collected herbs while explaining everything. Yuri smiled as he watched Phil work so hard. After only a few minutes, a large pile of herbs appeared in front of them. Phil was amazed, as it looked like they had gathered a huge amount. Yuri smiled and realized that Lime had the ability to find herbs easily, something he himself would be bad at. He thanked Lime, and Lime smiled back. Phil hesitantly stepped forward and said that she had tried her best, but had only managed to find one herb. Yuri told her that all the herbs belonged to both of them, not just him, and suggested they take them back together to see if they could sell them. Phil was surprised and asked if she could really do that. Yuri asked if she didn't need them. Phil shook her head and said she couldn't accept them, explaining that she needed to earn them with her own effort since she was an adventurer now. Yuri smiled and agreed with her, thinking she was right. Suddenly, Lime jumped toward Phil, making her ask in confusion what was happening. Lime began glowing and gently tickled her all over. Phil was confused and asked Yuri what was going on. Yuri smiled and told her to just watch. Moments later, her clothes were completely clean. She thanked Lime, saying now she could try as much as she wanted. Yuri said it wasn't over yet, as the best part was still coming. Suddenly, Lime gathered beneath her and grew into a large slime. Phil panicked and kept saying, "Wait," but within moments, Lime turned into a soft bed and began giving her a gentle massage. Phil felt amazing, as if all the tiredness in her body was slowly washing away. Soon, Yuri realized that she couldn't focus at all. Phil started shouting in embarrassment, asking how she was supposed to work with something like this happening. Yuri asked if she really couldn't continue. Blushing, Phil rushed off to search for herbs, shouting that when they returned, Yuri had to tell Lime to do it again for her. When Yuri didn't respond right away, she turned back and shouted at him to promise and remember his words. Yuri agreed, and with that, their first quest was completed easily. After completing the quest, they continued wandering through the forest, searching for more herbs, but they were unable to find anything at all. During this time, Yuri obtained another mid-class attributeless magic skill. He realized that it was the same skill he had gained when he woke up the other day. It seemed that this skill could be obtained simply by living normally in this world. Suddenly, Yuri heard Lime's voice in his head and wondered if it was telepathy. Still, he first asked what was wrong. Lime was acting very strange and scared. Yuri began visualizing what Lime was seeing and realized that he was now seeing things from Lime's point of view. He understood that this was part of the taming skill. Since he had obtained high-class skills, he could now use telepathic communication to talk with others and see through their vision. Through Lime's eyes, Yuri saw an E-rank wolf. He thought that it would not even be a fight if Lime were split apart like that, so he asked Lime to come back to him. Hearing Yuri say this, Phil asked in confusion what had happened. Meanwhile, Yuri was wondering whether Lime splitting up made him more noticeable to wild animals, since there should be no good or bad effect from doing so. Suddenly, Phil shouted his name. Yuri looked toward her and saw that the wolf had come very close. Phil shouted that it was an E-rank wolf and that they should run away. However, Yuri asked Phil to wait and told her to try taking down the monster. Phil asked what he meant, but before she could react, the wolf rushed toward them. Somehow, both of them managed to dodge the attack. Terrified, Phil shouted that there was no way she could do it since they were still F-rank adventurers. Yuri replied that this was exactly why she should try. If she defeated the monster, her achievement would be recognized. Phil thought about it for a moment and then hesitantly agreed to try defeating the wolf. When the wolf charged at her again, Yuri told her to focus. She agreed, but the moment the wolf came close, she ran away again, shouting that she was too scared. Yuri shouted at her not to take her eyes off the enemy, warning her that the moment she looked away, she would die. Phil took out a dagger and tensely stared at the wolf. The wolf attacked again, but this time she kept her eyes on it and easily dodged the strike. She thought that if she could dodge a single attack, maybe she should increase her offense. However, she quickly realized that it was better not to rush. If the wolf avoided her first strike, she could follow up with another. With that in mind, she began attacking the wolf. Watching this, Yuri realized that he was right. Among the 6 people in the game, Phil had grown the fastest. He was simply waiting for her to land a clean hit. As Phil rushed forward to attack, her leg suddenly got caught in a tree root, and she was about to fall. Just in time, Lime came to her rescue and saved her from hitting the ground. She thanked Lime and immediately moved to attack the wolf again. This time, she successfully drove her dagger into the wolf's head. She had finally done it. Smiling happily, she looked toward Yuri and told him that she succeeded. However, Yuri replied that it was not over yet. Confused, she asked what he meant. When she looked up, she saw more wolves approaching them. Their path was now blocked, surrounded by dangerous wolf fangs closing in on them. Phil and Yuri were now completely surrounded by wolves on all sides. Phil tensed up, while Yuri noticed something strange. These wolves were only rank E, yet they were hunting together intelligently. If they were smart enough to coordinate and even use one as bait, their rank should be higher. He realized there was likely a leader controlling them somewhere in the forest. Yuri commanded Lime to find the leader from a high vantage point, which would make it easier to spot. But at that moment, the wolves charged toward them. Phil shouted for him to watch out, but to her shock, Yuri effortlessly killed a wolf with a single slash. She was stunned when she saw it was his icicle sword. Yuri told Phil to step back a little. While fighting, Yuri realized that with just a few wolves, he could manage with his sword alone. But since the numbers kept growing, he decided to use Invoke Magic Enhancement to increase the sword's durability. With the reinforced sword, he cut down many wolves in a single swing. Phil was amazed and praised him, but Yuri told her not to, as more wolves kept coming. Deep down, he noticed the number of enemies wasn't decreasing, they were only increasing. He knew he had to take down their leader. Just then, Lime reported it had found the leader, a silver wolf, rank D. Yuri immediately fired a fireball at it. The silver wolf, smart and alert, dodged the attack. Yuri realized that hitting it in such a cover-filled area would be difficult. He thought quickly for a better plan. Phil anxiously warned that there were too many wolves to fight at once. Yuri raised his fire magic to an advanced level and ordered Lime to quickly leave the forest. Phil, shocked, asked what he was trying to do. Yuri unleashed his advanced fire magic on the silver wolf. The wolf was stunned and trapped with nowhere to run. In moments, half the forest burned down from the attack. Phil screamed in shock, asking what he had just done. Yuri calmly said he had just used some fire magic and asked if it wasn't normal. Phil shouted back that it definitely wasn't normal at all. Now their work was finished, and they returned to the Adventurers Guild. Phil handed over all the non-elemental magical stones they had collected from the wolves. Tiffany was shocked and asked if all these stones were from defeating the wolves, finding it hard to believe that Phil had taken down so many on her first quest. Phil smiled and said that this is what happens if she puts her mind to it. Tiffany nodded and said she would accept Phil as an F-rank adventurer and register her with the guild. Phil jumped in celebration, thrilled to become an F-rank adventurer. Tiffany then asked the next person to present their findings. She saw Yuri and asked what he had brought back. Yuri explained that he hadn't physically collected anything, but had used special magic to gather all the herbs and stones from the forest. He said he had several medical herbs and magical stones and asked Tiffany to appraise them. Tiffany looked tensely at the amount, while the other workers came forward, astonished at the sheer quantity. One worker asked the group leader if a pharmacist could even handle so many at once. The president, Raka, appraised the herbs and stones and discovered a medium-sized windstone of rank C. He stiffened, remembering that the drop condition for such a stone was defeating the silver wolf in the northern forest. He asked Yuri nervously if he had defeated the silver wolf. Yuri calmly confirmed that he had. Everyone fell silent, stunned by the news. Yuri then asked if he could also become an adventurer. Raka requested Yuri to wait a moment. Yuri agreed. Raka then instructed the workers to appraise all the herbs and stones and said he would go upstairs to speak with the bosses. Seeing the leader panicked like that, Yuri felt a little tense, wondering if everything was okay. While waiting, Yuri asked Phil if he could register as an adventurer. Phil smiled and said of course he could. She added that with his strength, it wouldn't be strange if he quickly reached E or D rank, which is extremely rare for newcomers. Above all, she was excited that he could finally become an adventurer and thanked him. Soon, the President Raka returned and apologized for the delay. He explained that they would make an exception and raise Yuri's rank by 4 levels, registering him as a B rank adventurer. Everyone around them was stunned. Phil immediately congratulated Yuri, and the other workers questioned if the leader was serious. Raka confirmed that after completing the morning quest, subduing the wolves, and defeating the silver wolf, registering Yuri as a B-rank adventurer was completely justified. Raka said that it might be a bother for Yuri, but asked if he could come to the guild so they could start re-registering him as a B-rank adventurer. Yuri calmly replied no and asked them to wait a moment. Raka looked confused and asked what was happening. Yuri explained that he didn't want to go through with it and asked Raka to leave him registered as an F-rank adventurer. Raka tensed and asked why, and the others were equally shocked, asking the same question. Yuri explained that he had heard that high-rank adventurers are often forcibly called to the guild and assigned high-level quests that he didn't want to do. Raka acknowledged that this was true, but added that high-rank adventurers receive higher ranks, honors, and much greater rewards. Yuri returned the B-rank tag and said that he wanted to live freely without anyone restricting him. Saying this, he began leaving the guild. Raka was surprised and called after him, but Yuri didn't stop. One worker asked Raka if it was really okay to let Yuri leave like that. Raka replied that in his 20 years at the guild, he had never seen an adventurer with no desire for rank or reward. Meanwhile, Yuri told Phil that for the time being, he would remain under her care as an F-rank adventurer. Phil asked hesitantly if that would really be okay. Yuri agreed, because deep down, all he wanted was to be freer than anyone else. After leaving the Adventurers Guild, Yuri felt happy because he had sold all the magic stones and healing herbs, and he had safely registered as an adventurer. He decided to relax for the night and take things easy. While walking, he noticed a bar called Cervantes Adventurers Bar and decided to go inside. As soon as he entered, he saw that the bar was very neat and clean, and there was no one sitting inside. The bartender came to greet him, but suddenly looked shocked and nervously asked why Yuri was there. Yuri looked confused and stared at the bartender, asking who he was because he did not remember him at all. The bartender sighed and said that it was Panther and they had met in the eastern forest. Yuri then remembered him and asked why he was dressed like a bartender. Panther explained that he had already quit adventuring and had been carrying his luggage everywhere without complaint. Since Yuri had already defeated the cockatrice, Panther thought it would be fine for him to work as a cook. Yuri asked in confusion if it was really okay like that. Panther told him not to misunderstand, as he had been hired by the bar owner and planned to start a new life. After a while, Panther returned with his special spaghetti Nero dish and explained that Rial has a beautiful sea where rare fish can be caught. He said the dish was made using fresh seafood and squid ink as the base. The moment Yuri took the first bite of the dish, he was amazed and said that it was extremely delicious. Panther felt happy after hearing the praise. Yuri then asked how and when Panther had learned to cook. Panther explained that he had spent a long time on sub-duty because he was not very good at fighting, so he started experimenting with cooking and eventually became a chef. Yuri realized that Panther had somehow found a way to survive. Panther laughed and agreed with him. Panther then leaned closer and said that he had heard Yuri had successfully registered as an adventurer. Yuri nodded and asked how Panther knew about it. Panther replied that it had already become a hot topic in town because there was a person who nearly broke the magic meter and almost killed the examiner. Hearing this, Yuri realized that the rumors were getting exaggerated. Panther then warned Yuri to be careful, saying that if Yuri stood out too much, he would attract the attention of a man named Jack. Hearing Jack's name again, Yuri became annoyed and asked what exactly was going on with this Jack fellow. Panther explained that it was said Jack had a goal of wiping out adventurers by assassinating them. Yuri asked in confusion why Jack would do such a thing. Panther replied that adventurers exist to control the growing number of monsters, and if adventurers decrease, the rewards increase. Recently, rookies had especially been targeted, so Yuri needed to be cautious. Suddenly, Yuri pushed Panther back toward the wall. Panther was confused and asked what that was about. At the same moment, someone attacked Yuri from above. Yuri realized he had reacted to protect both himself and Panther. Even while holding his food, Yuri wondered how the attacker had entered without triggering the bell. The attacker kept muttering that he would kill Yuri. Panther then asked the man if he was the human slashing Joker, a notorious figure in town. Yuri realized that the attacker was surprisingly famous. The Joker shouted again and charged at Yuri with his axe, but Yuri easily dodged the attack. The Joker laughed, excited that someone could avoid his strikes, and continued attacking relentlessly. Yuri calmly kept dodging with smooth movements. While evading the attacks, Yuri finished his meal and thanked Panther, saying the food was delicious and that he would take the wine as well. When the Joker rushed in again, Yuri used a flash movement and appeared behind him. As Yuri infused the bottle with magic and swung it, the Joker blocked the attack with ease and said that he could see it clearly. Yuri was surprised, realizing that the man could perceive his detection magic, which meant he was very different from the opponents Yuri had faced before. Joker pushed Yuri backward once again and rushed in to attack, but this time Yuri calmly raised his hand and blocked the strike. To everyone's shock, the axe shattered into pieces. In reality, the moment Yuri touched the weapon, he activated reduced durability enhancement magic. It took a split second to take effect, but once it did, the axe could no longer withstand the pressure and broke apart easily. Before Joker could even react, Yuri began casting advanced water magic, Icebind, and softly said goodbye. Joker looked confused, wondering what Yuri had done, when suddenly a wine bottle fell from above and struck him directly. What Joker did not realize was that Yuri had already implanted Grand Class magic into the bottle. The spell activated on impact, and Joker was defeated instantly. Yuri looked around and asked in confusion whether the battle was really over. Panther stood frozen in shock and shouted, "What?" Yuri apologized, saying that it seemed he had caused a bit of a mess. The scene then shifted elsewhere. Jack was shown standing in disbelief, asking, "What, the Joker got killed?" One of his partners confirmed it, saying yes, even the Joker did not stand a chance against that new guy. Jack became furious, shouting that it was impossible. They had invested so much money, and now everything had been ruined in an instant. Suddenly a voice echoed through the room, laughing mockingly. "Looks like you're in quite the pickle, Jack." Jack clenched his fists and shouted angrily, asking who the hell was there. From the shadows, a figure slowly stepped forward, still laughing. With that, a new threat finally revealed itself, marking the beginning of something far more dangerous. Jack, seeing the anonymous man, quickly drew his sword and tensely demanded to know who he was and where he had come from. To Jack's surprise, the man suddenly vanished from in front of them. A moment later, Jack heard the same voice from behind. The anonymous man calmly told him to put his weapon away, saying that he had come to propose a valuable exchange. Jack asked, still on guard, what the exchange was. The anonymous man then revealed a strange globe and told Jack to take a look inside. When Jack did, he saw Yuri trapped within the globe. The man began laughing and said that he knew Jack harbored deep hatred toward Yuri. Jack admitted that it was true. The anonymous man and Jack then began talking quietly. Watching this, Jack's companion grew uneasy and asked what was going on between them. Suddenly, the anonymous man leaned in and whispered something into Jack's ear. At once, Jack's expression changed, and he began acting strangely. Jack's companion rushed toward him and asked what was wrong, but Jack suddenly burst into uncontrollable rage, screaming that he would kill him, over and over again. His companion tried desperately to snap him out of it, but Jack did not respond. He continued shouting only one thing, that he would kill Yuri. The next morning, Yuri was happily traveling toward his destination. When he reached the town, he remembered that Panther had told him this place was famous for weapons and that the shop was called Whitebeard's shop. As Yuri stepped inside, he saw many high-quality weapons displayed throughout the store. Suddenly, he heard a girl shouting angrily at someone, saying that she had already told him 1,000 times. Someone from behind asked what had happened. The girl shouted back, demanding to know what he planned to do about the sword she had bought from the shop. The girl's name was Rico Glanis, and she was 16 years old. On the other side stood a 53-year-old dwarf named Ugo Mantle, the owner of the shop. Ugo angrily told Rico to shut up, saying she was too young and that after all the hard work he had put into forging that weapon, she still dared to shout at him. Rico shouted back, asking what kind of attitude that was after selling her a faulty sword. She demanded to know how he could talk to her like that and insisted on a proper refund since she had been sold a defective product. Ugo firmly replied that his craftsmanship was flawless and that no matter how many times he forged it, the result would be the same. Rico, growing even more furious, asked what he meant by that. Yuri quietly analyzed the situation using his abilities. He saw that the weapon was a rank D steel rapier and finally understood the problem. Ugo's forging technique was excellent, but the materials he was using were poor. In fact, all the weapons and shields in the shop had high craftsmanship, almost A-rank quality, but were made from low-grade materials. At first, Yuri considered leaving to buy a weapon from another store. However, he felt that solving the mystery behind this shop might earn him more merit. He stepped forward and calmly said that he had examined the weapons and found nothing wrong with their craftsmanship. Rico shouted in disbelief, asking what he was talking about. Ugo laughed lightly and told her to listen. Yuri then explained that the real issue was the poor quality of the materials being used. Ugo was surprised but agreed, admitting that Yuri had sharp eyes. Rico asked what that meant. Ugo explained that there was nothing he could do about it. Making truly high-quality weapons in this town had become impossible because they no longer had access to good materials. Both Yuri and Rico looked confused, so Ugo began to explain. About 2 months ago, The town of Rial used to obtain ore from the northern mountains. However, a clan of golems had settled there, making mining impossible. The guild had posted a subjugation quest, but no adventurer had accepted it. As a result, the town had been forced to import inferior ore from a neighboring village. Ugo explained that the rapier Rico bought cost 20,000 gal, and although the material was poor, his craftsmanship ensured that it should not have broken so easily. Still, he offered her a partial refund. Rico angrily asked if he was implying that she was bad at using a rapier. While they argued, Yuri calmly spoke up again. He said that, in other words, all that needed to be done was to defeat the golems in the northern mountains. Ugo looked at Yuri in shock and asked if he could really do that. Yuri replied simply, yes. Ugo became very happy upon hearing this and said that he had been waiting for someone like Yuri to take on the task. Just as Yuri was about to leave, the girl from behind asked him to wait. She introduced herself as Rico and said that she was also an adventurer. She added that she wanted to take down the golems as well and asked Yuri to show her his license. Yuri agreed and handed his license to her. The moment Rico saw it, she shouted in shock. She couldn't believe that Yuri was only an F-rank adventurer and angrily told him that he shouldn't do something so reckless, asking if he wanted to die. Yuri asked nervously whether he wasn't allowed to take the quest. Rico replied that of course he wasn't, explaining that F-rank adventurers were only supposed to do farming or gathering quests. She added that F-rank adventurers were basically called potato rank. Yuri asked in confusion why they were called that. Rico explained that since F-rank adventurers were always given dirty farming work, people mockingly called them potato rank. Yuri then asked why she was getting so worked up, saying that even if he died, it had nothing to do with her. Rico got upset and said that she would feel terrible if someone died because of her, so she decided that she would follow him anyway. Yuri thought for a moment, and then agreed, telling her that she could come along if she wanted. Yuri and Rico finally reached the North Ore Mines, and there, Rico tensely asked if Yuri was really fine using the old sword he brought with him. Yuri replied yes, saying that since one weapon costs 5,000 yen, any weapon can be used properly, and he believed even this sword would work for them. Rico replied that she had never heard of anyone fighting golems with just a sword. She also said she did not think Yuri was that kind of person, as he came all the way here just because he argued with the weapon shop owner. Yuri replied that she was the same, because she followed him here saying she was worried. Rico felt embarrassed hearing this and shouted that she already said that before they arrived. But before they could talk more, a rank D golem appeared in front of them. Yuri was surprised by the golem's size, as it was much bigger than he expected. While Yuri was still thinking, Rico rushed forward to attack the golem and told Yuri to watch closely how she fights and observe her movements. She attacked the golem with her hammer, moving fast so the golem could not strike back. However, even after many attacks, the golem did not take much damage. Still, Rico continued fighting without stopping. On the other side, Yuri carefully watched her movements and the battle, and understood that golems have high attack power and defense but low speed, so it was good that she waited for chances to attack from behind with her hammer. After finishing her attacks, Rico returned and asked Yuri how it was, saying she always fights like that. Yuri replied that it was good if she could reach the golem's back and attack from there. Rico then told him to stay behind since he only had a sword, but suddenly the golem stood up again and threw rocks toward them. There were so many that Rico became tense and did not know what to do, but Yuri stepped forward to protect her and began deflecting all the rocks with his bare hands. Surprisingly, the rocks were sent back and hit the golem instead. Rico was shocked and tensely asked what Yuri just did. Yuri replied calmly that he only returned the attack to the golem and asked if something was wrong. Rico said that there was definitely something wrong and asked what kind of technique Yuri used to do that. But before Yuri could answer, the golem stood back up again, making Rico panic. This time, Yuri asked Rico to lead the golem toward him. As he said this, Yuri started walking forward. Rico tensely told him to wait, asking what he would do with just that sword, and said it would be better if he used the hammer instead. Yuri calmly told her not to worry, saying the sword was more than enough for him. Deep inside, Yuri thought that no matter what kind of stone the golem was made of, what really mattered was its hardness. In a way, he was fighting strictly by logic. He knew there were many ways to defeat a golem, and the method Rico used was not wrong, but it would take time. Without hesitating, Yuri rushed toward the golem. Seeing this, Rico shouted in panic, asking what he was doing and warning him not to go straight at it because the golem would slam him and he needed to dodge. This time, Yuri used strength-enhancing magic along with a powerful slash. He knew that even though golems have great strength and defense, their speed is extremely slow. With that single slash, the golem was destroyed in an instant. Seeing the golem collapse so easily, Rico was completely stunned. With a shocked expression, she asked what that was and how Yuri managed to do it. Yuri responded and started moving forward. After some time, Yuri defeated all the golems inside the mine, while Rico could only stand there, covered in sweat and unable to say a single word. After defeating all the golems, Yuri wondered if the mission was finally complete. Looking around and seeing nothing left, he thought the quest should be finished. Rico tensely replied yes, but she was clearly a little scared of Yuri now. On the other side, Yuri started collecting the iron ore of rank E that is used to make equipment. He gathered all the iron ore and decided to give the remaining magic stones to Lime. After that, they decided to head back. On the way back, Rico nervously asked what Yuri really was, since he defeated a golem in one hit and used a sword she had never seen before. Yuri calmly replied that he was just an ordinary F-rank adventurer. Rico shouted at him, saying not to joke around because she was asking seriously. Yuri felt tense, thinking that he was not trying to mess with her at all. Suddenly, Rico noticed that the entrance was blocked by rocks. She asked if there were rocks there before. Yuri replied that he did not think so either. Just as Yuri was wondering who blocked the entrance, Jack and his group appeared behind them, laughing. Jack praised Yuri, saying that defeating all the golems alone was impressive. Yuri remembered Jack from before, but this time Jack looked far more dangerous. Yuri asked what Jack wanted, but before he could finish, Rico stepped forward and asked if Jack had any business with her friend. One of Jack's men threatened her, saying they would kill her if she did not move. Rico got angry and rushed forward, daring them to try. Seeing this, Yuri asked Lime to protect Rico. Just before Rico attacked, Lime blocked her path. Rico asked what was happening, confused. Yuri had already told Lime to find another exit and escape with Rico. After they left, Yuri asked Jack why he kept getting in the way of adventurers like him. Jack laughed bitterly and shouted that Yuri was the real problem. He said Yuri was annoying and ruining everything. Jack explained that they struggled to become adventurers, only to be crushed by higher-ranked ones and used as bait. To them, the world was survival of the fittest, and the weak were just tools. But then Yuri appeared, clearing impossible quests and gaining attention. Jack said that was why he hated Yuri and why Yuri had to die. Jack ordered his men to attack, but Yuri calmly defeated them all with ease. Suddenly, a wind-like attack came at him, but Yuri dodged it easily. Jack stepped forward, saying Yuri's real opponent was him. Yuri thought about using fire magic but stopped, knowing it was dangerous inside a cave. To his shock, the defeated men stood back up. Yuri realized they were in a berserk state and that Jack was the same. He wondered who was controlling all this. At that moment, Yuri gained advanced wind magic. As the enemies attacked again, Yuri defended himself. When Jack prepared another move, Yuri released the advanced wind spell Tempest, making everyone freeze in fear. Just a few seconds later, all the adventurers, including Jack, were swept away by the Tempest attack. It seemed like everything was finally over. However, Yuri suddenly felt something strange and spoke calmly, saying that there should be one more person left, right? From behind the stones, a shadow slowly rose. A masked, anonymous man emerged from the darkness and praised Yuri for noticing his presence. He said that Yuri had exceeded his expectations. The man introduced himself and said his name was Nero Nightmare, asking Yuri to remember it. Yuri could tell immediately that this man was different from the others. Nero said it was obvious that Jack and his friends were no match for Yuri and called him truly amazing. Hearing this, Yuri realized that Nero was the one who had been manipulating Jack and the others. Yuri wondered whether he should attack Nero immediately. Before Yuri could make a move, Nero calmly said that he wanted to give Yuri two choices. The first option was to join their clan. The second option was to be killed right there. Yuri was confused and asked what kind of clan Nero was talking about. Nero told him not to worry, saying that Yuri had more than enough talent and that he had personally observed Yuri's abilities. As the conversation continued, Yuri started feeling strange. His chest began to sting more and more. Suddenly, memories from his past life surfaced. He remembered a creature from his previous world and muttered that Nero was a substructured human. Yuri recalled that when he was a swordsman in his past life, he had faced serious trouble after getting involved with a clan like this. Nero responded that he had no idea what Yuri was talking about. Yuri then asked if it was related to number, though his memories were still unclear. However, every time he looked at Nero, those words echoed in his mind. Nero replied that he was surprised Yuri remembered the concept of numbers. He added that substructures were people who risked their lives for the organization. Nero then removed his glove and revealed a number engraved on his hand, 928. He said that this number was proof of his worth and his identity within the organization. Seeing this, Yuri remembered that every member of that organization had a number on their hand that never disappeared. Since he had been reincarnated into a new world, Yuri realized he should have one too. Yuri slowly removed his glove and showed his hand. Nero froze in shock. His eyes widened as he stared at the number engraved on Yuri's hand. 0. Nero shouted that it was impossible, saying that number should have disappeared 500 years ago. Deep down, Yuri was completely confused. He knew that number 1 represented the strongest. But then, what did number 0 mean? Nero suddenly burst into laughter and said that he finally understood what Yuri really meant. He said that Yuri was trying to stop them, and now he had no other choice but to kill him. Saying this, Nero began moving around Yuri at incredible speed, asking mockingly where he should strike first. Yuri could clearly see that Nero was much faster than the adventurers he had fought earlier. When Nero rushed into attack, Yuri focused only on dodging. Then, in the blink of an eye, Yuri vanished from Nero's sight. Nero froze for a moment, wondering how Yuri had suddenly disappeared. From above, Yuri launched an attack. He thought that no matter what, he would have to use at least a little magic to restrict Nero's movement. Yuri cast a beginner-level fireball, which exploded on the ground with a loud blast. However, to his surprise, Nero managed to dodge it. Even so, Nero was able to locate Yuri's position through that attack. Before Nero could counter, Yuri used beginner-level wind magic. Another blast followed, and when Yuri landed back on the ground, Nero was nowhere to be seen. Instead, Yuri noticed that the other adventurers were lying injured on the ground. He wondered if he had miscalculated the power of his attack. However, since the berserk effect seemed to be wearing off, he thought the mission was finally over. Suddenly, Nero reappeared and shouted that Yuri had forced him to use stronger magic. But before Nero could act, Yuri cast an intermediate-level water spell, Ice Bind. In an instant, Nero was frozen in place. Nero shouted in disbelief, saying that Yuri should not be able to use multiple elemental spells. Ignoring him, Yuri combined wind and water magic and unleashed an ice storm. Nero tried to escape, but he couldn't move because of the freezing spell. This time, Nero was finally defeated. Breathing heavily and gripping his sword, Yuri stood before Nero and coldly thanked him for all the trouble he had caused. He said that Nero had made him and many others panic and had blocked his path. Nero weakly asked what Yuri meant by standing before him, and what Yuri truly was. Yuri raised his sword and slashed Nero, shouting that all he wanted was to live his life wherever it took him, without anyone standing in his way. The scene shifted to Rico and Lime, who had left the mine earlier. Lime was standing calmly, as usual, while Rico was furious. She was angry that they had somehow managed to escape, especially after she had promised Yuri that she would help him. With tension in her voice, Rico asked Lime if Yuri would really be all right. Just then, Yuri appeared in front of them. Seeing him, Rico immediately asked if he was okay. Yuri simply smiled, reassuring her without saying much. The scene then shifted to Ugo's workshop. Ugo was forging a sword, sparks flying as he worked. After finishing it, he walked outside and handed the sword to Yuri. He said that he had been waiting for him and that this sword was the result of all his effort. When Yuri analyzed the weapon, he learned its name, the bastard sword of the Grade B. Yuri thanked Ugo sincerely and asked how much debt he owed him for such a sword. Ugo laughed loudly and told Yuri to forget about the payment and just take it. Then, without hesitation, he tossed the sword toward Yuri and told him to take it free of charge. Yuri was shocked and wondered if Ugo was crazy to throw a sword so casually. In reality, Ugo was simply happy. After a long time, he had finally had some real fun forging a weapon again. Still, Yuri asked if it was really okay, pointing out that the sword was not made only from the materials he brought, as Ugo had also used materials from his own shop. Yuri couldn't believe that Ugo would go this far just to make a sword for him. Annoyed, Ugo shouted at Yuri to shut up and said that if he wanted the sword, he should just take it. Startled, Yuri quickly agreed and said that he would take good care of it. As Yuri turned to leave, Ugo smiled and told him to do his best. Yuri replied with a firm yes. When Yuri stepped out of the shop, he felt a strong wind blowing. Holding his new sword, memories of his past life slowly surfaced in his mind. Suddenly, Yuri felt something unusual. A notification appeared in his mind. He had obtained a new skill, superclass swordsmanship. Yuri wondered if he had gained it because he swung his sword with his full strength during the battle. At that moment, both Rico and Phil arrived and joined Yuri. They began talking to him and thanked him for what he had done. Phil thanked Yuri because she was able to break through the blocked wall on her own, while Rico thanked him as well, since she had received high-quality equipment from Ugo. When Rico and Phil noticed each other, both of them were shocked. Phil suddenly shouted in surprise and said that she couldn't believe it. She then teased Yuri, asking if he really had a preference for girls with a large chest. Hearing this, Rico became flustered and nervously denied it, saying that Phil had completely misunderstood the situation and that they were not in that kind of relationship at all. Phil, still suspicious, asked if that was really true, pointing out that Rico seemed unusually close to Yuri. Meanwhile, Yuri quietly reflected on everything. He remembered that there were moments when he had been worried about his future, but now his life as an adventurer had become far more exciting than he had ever imagined. With that thought, he decided that he would cherish this peaceful and free life to the fullest. A total of 1 month had passed since Yuri was reincarnated into this world. During that time, he experienced many strange adventures and intense battles. He completed daily quests as needed to survive, and slowly started getting used to the town of Rial. Somehow, he was managing well as an F-rank adventurer. The scene then shifted to the Adventurers Guild of Rial, where Tiffany greeted Yuri with a smile, saying that she had been waiting for him. Yuri replied that he was looking for a job. Tiffany curiously asked what kind of job he wanted. Yuri answered that he wanted a subjugation quest and preferred fighting a large number of enemies. Tiffany handed him a quest and asked what he thought about it. Yuri saw that it was a goblin subjugation quest, offering 20,000 gil for defeating 10 goblins. He started calculating in his head. The place he was staying at cost 4,000 gil per night, so defeating just 2 goblins would be enough for 1 night's stay. Before he could think further, Tiffany interrupted and asked if he had ever done a goblin subjugation quest before. Yuri thought about it. The first monsters he fought after coming to this world were goblins, but this was technically his first official goblin subjugation quest. Tiffany said that since it was his first time, she would recommend forming a party. Yuri asked why he needed a party. Tiffany explained that these quests often involve accidents, and for beginners, working in a party is safer as members can support each other. Yuri understood and started checking the quest board. He noticed a goblin subjugation request looking for a sword user. The notice mentioned that the party was waiting near the water fountain. Yuri decided to go and meet them. When Yuri reached the fountain, he began searching for the party. Soon, he noticed a boy joking around with 2 girls. The boy's name was Rit, and the girls were Emily and Mayusul. Emily told Rit to hurry up, saying that 3 people were already enough. Rit apologized and asked them to wait a little longer. Musil added that if they didn't hurry, another party might take the quest. Emily looked annoyed, complaining that Rit always worried too much. Rit smiled and said that as long as he was around there was nothing to worry about. Musil confidently said that a pack of goblins was nothing for them. At that moment, Yuri approached and said that he came because of the request on the board. Rit looked at Yuri, noticed his sword, and immediately understood. He thanked Yuri for coming and said that Yuri seemed perfect for the party, especially since he had such a good sword. Rit then introduced himself as the party leader. He introduced Emily as a mage and Mayusel as a catgirl fighter. After the introductions, Rit explained the rules. The reward would be split evenly among the 4 members. If they found any rare items, everything would be sold at a pawnshop and the money would be shared. Rit asked Yuri if he was okay with those conditions. Yuri replied that it sounded fine to him. Rit then asked Yuri to show his adventurer license, explaining that there had been cases where robbers pretended to join parties. Yuri, without any hesitation, handed his adventurer license to Rit. When Rit saw that Yuri was an F-rank adventurer, he immediately turned around and started walking away with his party, talking among themselves about how it was a complete waste of time. Yuri stood there looking confused. Rit angrily shouted at Yuri, telling him to disappear because they had no need for an F-rank adventurer. Emily told Rit to calm down, saying that if he held something like that, his hands would get dirty. Rit agreed with her. He then threw the license back at Yuri and sarcastically apologized, saying that his hand had slipped. After that, they left. A little later, Rico arrived there as well, looking for 1 more member for a goblin subjugation quest. She noticed Yuri near the water fountain and asked what he was doing there. The next scene shifted directly to the northern forest, where Yuri explained everything to her. Rico responded that it was the same for her. Yuri then said that if it were not for her, he would have gone on the quest alone, so he should thank her. Rico replied that he did not need to thank her, as she was actually thankful that she did not have to join a party like that. Yuri then curiously asked if it was considered rude for an F-rank adventurer to try to join a party. Rico replied that it was not rude at all, and that those people were simply very rude. She added that the required rank for a goblin subjugation quest is F, which means any adventurer can complete it. Rico then said that she would teach him something about quests, and her teacher mode started. She explained that there are 2 types of quests: special quests, which require a specific rank, and normal quests, which can be taken by adventurers of any rank. This quest was a normal one, as clearly stated on the request form. However, she warned that even normal quests can sometimes involve strong enemies. According to the map, goblins lived in these areas, and since the silver wolf that once ruled the forest had been defeated, the goblins had moved in. She told Yuri to keep his guard up. Yuri replied that he understood. Suddenly, they sensed someone approaching from the bushes behind them. When they turned around, they saw a group of adventurers who were also searching for goblins. One of them asked Yuri and Rico if they were there for the goblin quest as well. Yuri replied yes. The adventurer said that there were no goblins in that area, and that other adventurers seemed to have gone ahead, so it would be better for them to search elsewhere. Yuri thanked them for the advice, and they left. After that, Yuri asked Rico if she knew of another location. Rico replied that she did and asked him to wait a moment. She took out her map and pointed out another area, but said it would take about 2 hours to reach. Hearing that, Yuri remembered Lime and asked him to transform into a cockatrice. The moment Lime transformed, Rico was completely stunned. Yuri calmly climbed onto Lime's back and asked Rico what was wrong and why she was not getting on. Rico was still unable to process what was happening and froze in shock when she realized it was a giant cockatrice. Before she could say anything, Lime gently picked her up with his beak and placed her on his back. Yuri told her to hold on tightly, and Lime immediately took off into the air at full speed. Rico, still in shock, shouted in panic, asking what was happening and how Lime had turned into a giant cockatrice. Rico asked Yuri to tell Lime to slow down a little, and also begged him not to look at her, saying she was in a very bad condition. Hearing that, Yuri thought that they were already going quite slow, and if they went any slower, the cockatrice would not be able to fly properly. So instead, he asked Lime if he could help hold Rico. The next moment, Lime grabbed both of Rico's hands. Rico was completely shocked. Now she could not even hold her skirt to save herself from embarrassment. She screamed aloud, "No!" in panic. Even so, they finally reached the West Plateau. Yuri thanked Lime for the help. Rico, who was still in terrible shape, awkwardly praised Yuri, saying that even at that speed, he was still fine. She then asked if they could take a break. Yuri thought to himself that the present generation really was not good with fast rides like this. For him, it felt just like a fun roller coaster. They moved closer to a lake and decided to rest for a while. Rico was amazed by the scenery in front of her. She said that she had heard rumors about this place, but seeing it in person, it was truly beautiful. Yuri, however, was focused on something else. He felt the presence of others. More than 10 of them. Individually, they did not feel very strong, but they were hiding well, using their small bodies to conceal themselves. Rico told Yuri to look at the view, saying that they did not get to see such sights very often. To her surprise, Yuri calmly told her to draw her sword. Rico was confused. Before she could fully react, an arrow came flying straight toward her. Yuri instantly moved and blocked the arrow with his hand. Yuri realized that the enemies were hiding in the shadows, making this a perfect ambush spot for adventurers. Rico apologized to Yuri for being so careless. Suddenly, they spotted a goblin with a bow on its back, firing arrows at them. At that moment, they understood that this place had already become a goblin nest, or a lair. Soon, they found themselves completely surrounded by goblins. All at once, the goblins began firing arrows at them. To Rico's shock, Yuri alone was deflecting every single arrow with his incredible speed. Watching him, Rico realized that she could never reach that level of speed on her own. Yuri then told her to move to the front and said that he would support her from behind with magic. Rico agreed and rushed forward to attack the goblins. From behind, Yuri cast speed-up magic on her, along with strength-enhancing earth magic. The moment the magic took effect, Rico felt her body become lighter than ever before. She was shocked to find that she could now run at extremely high speed, almost like Yuri. Using that speed, she easily cut down the goblins standing in front of her while continuing to move non-stop. She felt amazing, and when only a few goblins were left, she was sure the battle was already won. But suddenly, a goblin appeared behind her and aimed an arrow at her back. Just in time, Yuri used beginner-level water magic and fired an ice needle, piercing the goblin before it could shoot. With their combined strength and magic, Yuri and Rico finally defeated all the goblins. When the battle ended, Rico rushed toward Yuri. Blushing and clearly embarrassed, she asked what he had done to her body. Yuri replied calmly that he had only used enhancement magic to make her stronger. He then asked, as if it were nothing, whether that was normal. Rico's mind felt like it was short-circuiting from shock. After everything she had seen and felt, she could only say that it was absolutely not normal at all. With the goblin subjugation quest completed, the two of them decided to search for more beasts to hunt next. On the way, Rico started acting strange and began walking awkwardly, so Yuri asked if she was in pain or if something was wrong. Rico replied awkwardly that there was no problem and told him not to worry about her. However, Yuri could tell that something was clearly wrong despite what she said. Suddenly Rico staggered and fell to the ground. She apologized and said that she might need to rest for a bit. When Yuri analyzed her condition, he noticed that her current status showed weak poison. Confused, he wondered when she had been poisoned. He went closer and asked if she had been hit anywhere during the fight with the goblins. She replied that she had only received a small graze on her left ankle from an arrow. Yuri asked if she could show him the wound for a moment. She agreed, saying that she did not mind. When Yuri looked at the wound, he noticed a strange discoloration, which made it clear that the goblin's arrows were poisoned. He explained this to Rico, saying that the goblins must have used poison on their arrows. Rico was stunned to hear that goblins were capable of using poison like that. Yuri asked if it was really that rare, and she replied that it was. Yuri then remembered that those goblins were using weapons properly, which meant they were quite intelligent. He thought that these goblins might have a higher level of intelligence than usual. Rico then realized that she did not have any poison-curing potion with her and said that she had been hoping they might meet another adventurer along the way. She apologized again, saying that she was only holding Yuri back. Yuri smiled and told her that it was not a problem at all. Rico looked at him in confusion. At that moment, Yuri asked Lime if he could suck out the poison from Rico's body. Lime agreed and attached himself to her leg, starting to draw out the poison. Rico felt very strange at first, but after a short while, her body began to feel much lighter and better. Both Yuri and Rico thanked Lime for his help. Just then, Yuri obtained a new skill, Advanced Level Holy Magic. He was happy to gain another new ability. After that, he asked Rico to show him the injured spot once more. She lifted her leg and showed it to him directly. Yuri then began using beginner-level holy magic, leaving Rico surprised as she watched him cast it. The wound healed within a few milliseconds, and Rico quickly thanked Yuri for it. After that, she asked in disbelief where on earth Yuri had learned such rare skills. Yuri curiously asked if healing magic was really that rare. She immediately replied, "Yes, of course," explaining that holy magic is considered the rarest of all skills. Yuri calmly answered that he had just learned it a moment ago. Hearing that, Rico was completely shocked and asked, "What?" After that, the two of them moved forward again, defeating every beast and goblin that appeared in their path. After several hours, they felt that they had taken care of most of the goblins in the area and decided that it was time to leave. Yuri then asked Lime to handle the remaining goblins. Lime began absorbing the goblins into himself, and as they were devoured, attributeless magic stones dropped to the ground. Yuri collected all the stones and bodies, thanking Lime for the help. Meanwhile, Rico was staring strangely at an axe lying nearby. Noticing this, Yuri asked if something was wrong. Rico replied that she wanted Yuri to take a closer look at the axe, asking if he did not find anything suspicious about it. When Yuri analyzed the weapon, he said that it was actually a very good quality axe for something a goblin should not normally possess. Rico agreed with him, explaining that goblins usually fight using rocks or sticks at best. However, these goblins were equipped with bows and arrows, axes, and even poisoned weapons. This was clearly abnormal behavior. In other words, there was a strong possibility that a goblin boss was controlling them from behind the scenes. Yuri asked if she meant something like a goblin lord. Rico nodded and replied, yes, saying that goblin lords are known to be the most powerful and dangerous type of goblin. Hearing this, Yuri realized that the goblin chief he had taken down the other day was actually an amazing monster. Rico continued talking in surprise, saying that she never expected the words Goblin Lord to come so casually from his mouth. She admitted that she did not think Yuri had such deep knowledge about monsters. Yuri replied in a confused tone that it was simply because a Goblin Lord was the first monster he had ever defeated, so he naturally knew about it. Rico burst out laughing, saying there was no way someone could defeat a Goblin Lord alone. However, her laughter quickly faded, and she tensely asked if Yuri had really defeated a Goblin Lord by himself. Yuri calmly answered yes. Rico started muttering to herself, realizing that with Yuri, such a thing might actually be possible. She seemed unable to process it completely. Yuri then asked that if a boss was nearby, was there any way to pinpoint its location? Rico replied that it would be difficult, as these goblins were unusually smart, and she doubted they would easily lead anyone straight to the Goblin Lord. Understanding the situation, Yuri decided that they would need to trace the goblins instead. He focused his magical power and searched for nearby goblin groups. Once he found them, Yuri asked Lime to take care of the task. Lime shrank his body and moved toward the goblins, attaching small parts of himself to their clothes to act as hidden eyes. Rico asked in a tense voice what Yuri had done this time. Yuri explained that to track the Goblin Lord, he had Lime place a part of himself on the goblins as a spy. With everything prepared, Yuri's expression turned serious. He told Rico that it was time to begin following the trail and trace the Goblin Lord. Rico took a deep breath and simply replied, "Okay." Finally, after following the goblins for a long time, Yuri and Rico arrived at a cave. Rico signaled Yuri to stay quiet as the goblins entered the cave one by one. Yuri and Rico stopped at the entrance and carefully observed it. The entrance was quite small, but Yuri could sense that the inside was wide and deep, making it a perfect hiding place from enemies. Yuri told Rico that there was no doubt the Goblin Lord was inside, as Lime had also confirmed its presence. Suddenly, a voice came from behind, asking what Yuri was doing there. When Yuri turned around, he saw Rit, along with Mayusil and Emily. Rit sneered and called Yuri an F-rank potato digger, mocking him by asking if there was a potato field nearby. Emily, looking genuinely curious, asked why Yuri was even at a cave in the first place. Rit laughed and replied that Yuri must have lost his way to the fields, continuing to make fun of him. Rico quietly asked Yuri if this was the person he had mentioned before. Yuri replied yes. Rit then noticed Rico and asked if both of them were planning to enter the nest. Yuri calmly answered yes. Hearing this, Rit said he would stop insulting Yuri, but warned that it was far too reckless for an F-rank adventurer to enter a monster nest. Suddenly, Emily seemed to think of something. She walked closer to Yuri and asked if he really intended to go inside. Then, in a soft voice, she asked him to carry her luggage, saying that they had traveled for a long time and her shoulders and back were hurting. Seeing Emily so close to Yuri, Rico became visibly jealous, wondering why this woman was getting so close to him. Emily tried to use her charm and whispered to Yuri that if he carried her luggage, she would do something nice for him later. Yuri had no idea what she meant, but since he did not really care, he agreed. Before he could move, Rico stepped in between them, loudly telling Emily to stay away from Yuri. She then turned to Yuri and asked what he was thinking, saying there was no way he should accept something like that. Yuri replied honestly that he did not know what awaited them inside the nest, and Emily had already been injured once before. Hearing this, Rico fell silent for a moment, unsure of what to do next. At that point, Rit and her companions started walking into the cave, saying that whatever Yuri and Rico decided had nothing to do with them, and they were going in first. While entering, Rit asked Emily if her shoulder really hurt that much. Emily answered yes, adding that she thought Yuri and Rico could also be used as shields if something strange happened. Rit agreed with her reasoning, and soon, all of them disappeared into the dark nest together. Seeing the goblins, Yuri realized something was off. The goblin elite he had fought before were nowhere near this large. After analyzing them carefully, he understood that they were in an abnormal state known as rampage, a condition that drastically boosts a goblin's strength and size. Emily asked nervously if Rit could really handle those goblins. Rit, though clearly tense inside, tried to act confident and replied that they were just goblins, so of course he could defeat them. However, deep down, he was panicking. He had never heard of goblins like these before. Weren't goblins supposed to be small? Rit charged at one of them, but the goblin easily grabbed his sword with one hand and punched him hard in the stomach, sending him flying. Rit immediately lost all courage. He began crawling and shouting as he scrambled backward. Reaching Emily, he clung to her like a terrified child. Emily yelled, asking what he was doing, but Rit screamed in fear, pushing both girls forward and using them as shields while he ran away. Now Musel and Emily were left standing helplessly in front of the goblins. The goblins began to toy with them, lifting them up and throwing them onto their backs. The girls struggled and screamed for help, but the goblins did not stop. Rit shouted from behind, saying it was not his fault and that he did not do anything wrong. Yuri calmly called Rico's name. Rico told him not to worry about her and to go ahead. She said she was a swordswoman too and could protect herself. Yuri nodded and, before leaving, told her that the sandwich she made was really good. He asked if she could make it again once the quest was over. Blushing, Rico nodded and softly replied yes. Yuri smiled, and then rushed forward, charging straight toward the goblins to save Emily and Mayusel. The goblin kept dragging Emily deeper into the cave, throwing her roughly onto the ground. Another goblin did the same to Mayusel and held her down tightly. Emily was confused and scared. She tried calling out to Mayusel, but Mayusel did not respond at all. She had already lost consciousness. The goblin then turned back toward Emily and began pulling at her clothes, clearly intending to do something terrible. Emily froze in fear. But just before the goblin could do anything, its head suddenly fell to the ground. Emily's eyes widened in shock. Standing there was Yuri. The second goblin noticed Yuri and tried to move, but before it could react, Yuri slashed forward and cut it down as well. Yuri immediately went to Mayusel and asked if she was all right, but she still did not respond. At that moment, Yuri sensed more enemies approaching. Several goblins rushed in from the darkness. Yuri realized that fighting them one by one with a sword would be troublesome, so he raised his hand and used intermediate-level wind magic, Wind Wall Shield. A violent blast of compressed wind surged forward, crushing the goblins and blowing them away with overwhelming force. However, one goblin slipped through the black wind and lunged toward Yuri from behind. Before Yuri could turn around, the goblin was cut down instantly. Rico stood there, sword in hand. Yuri called out her name in surprise and told her that she had saved him. Rico looked confused and replied that she did not know it was him there. She thought it was just another goblin. Yuri praised her, saying he was amazed she could fight so accurately even in the darkness. Rico shook her head and replied simply that she did not see clearly at all. She just thought that if something was moving, it must be an enemy, so she cut it. Moreover, she added that if it really had been him, he would have been able to dodge her sword anyway. Hearing that, Yuri became tense and did not know how to respond. Just then, a goblin Shuri appeared and shouted, asking how such puny humans dared to enter his domain. As usual, Rico started trembling. She had never imagined that a goblin capable of speaking the human language could exist. Looking at the goblin Shuri, she felt that she stood no chance against an enemy with such enormous magical power. Fear took over her body, and she found herself unable to move. Yuri told her not to worry, saying that the goblin boss he had fought before was far stronger than this one. Rico replied that this goblin was leading the others, and his intelligence must have increased greatly, so Yuri should not underestimate him. Yuri smiled and told her to calm down. He said that even if the Shuri was stronger than ordinary goblins, Rico herself was also strong. Seeing his smile, Rico managed to gather her courage. Yuri then asked if Rico could help him. She answered yes. The goblin Shuri ordered the goblins to attack the humans, but Yuri and Rico easily cut them down one after another. While fighting, Yuri felt something strange. The battle was too easy. The goblins they had fought earlier on the West Plateau were much stronger. He began to suspect that this was a trap set by the goblin Shuri. Suddenly, the goblin Shuri burst into laughter, saying that they had made a mistake by killing those goblins. Out of the dead bodies, something strange began to emerge. Yuri saw fireball-like orbs rising up and rushing straight toward him. The moment they hit his body, an intense heat spread through him. He quickly analyzed the phenomenon and realized that it was a drain-type skill, one that absorbed the enemy's power. He wondered if this was connected to the cursed fog they had encountered earlier. The goblin Shuri started ranting, saying that there had been no real fight from the beginning, and that now he would show Yuri the true horror of curse magic. Yuri began to feel tense as his consciousness started to fade. Suddenly, to his surprise, Yuri acquired an advanced level curse magic skill. Rico hurriedly asked if he was all right. Yuri smiled and replied that he would be fine now. The goblin Shuri shouted in shock, demanding to know what Yuri was talking about. Yuri then activated spell reversal, telling the goblin Shuri that since he liked curse magic so much, he should experience it himself. Instantly, the same curse that had been draining Yuri rebounded onto the goblin Shuri. He screamed in disbelief, asking how Yuri had done it as the spell turned against him. In just a few moments, the goblin Shuri was defeated as if the battle had never been a challenge at all. Yuri calmly muttered that now the goblin Shuri would be the one to learn the true horrors of curse magic. The scene then shifted to some time later at the port town of Rial, where Yuri was peacefully enjoying a moment of rest. After completing the subjugation quest, Yuri and Rico had fairly split the rewards. Rit, who had desperately run for his life, managed to escape the cave alone. Meanwhile, the two girls he abandoned were left in deep shock after being betrayed by him. In the present, Yuri was fishing by the port. After some effort, he finally managed to catch a D-rank fish known as a bullfish. A man from the cat race named Patty Rhodes approached him from behind and praised him, saying that Yuri had done well today. Patty explained that bullfish, also called wolffish, were quite hard to catch because they moved a lot and were difficult to trap with nets, which made their market price fairly high. He also added that wolffish meat tasted really good. Patty then asked Yuri if he planned to sell it. In truth, Patty was a kind and easygoing person who had recently been teaching Yuri how to fish. Although Patty was a well-known adventurer, he preferred enjoying life by taking on fishing-related quests rather than dangerous battles. After chatting for a while, Patty said he was heading to another fishing spot and told Yuri to call him if anything unusual happened. As Yuri continued fishing, his thoughts drifted back to his previous life in Japan. He remembered how overworked he had been, completely drained by his company and his routine. Perhaps that exhaustion was the reason he now valued freedom so deeply. Suddenly, the fishing rod grew extremely heavy. Yuri immediately reinforced it with strengthening magic. From a distance, Patty shouted in concern, asking if something was wrong. Yuri replied that the rod had suddenly become much heavier than before. Patty rushed over and observed the situation, then said that when someone fishes for a long time, they sometimes end up hooking something enormous. He warned Yuri to pull it up quickly, or the rod might break if the struggle dragged on. Yuri nodded and used his full strength to pull. To everyone's shock, what emerged from the water was not a normal fish. It was a C-rank boss shark. People around the port screamed and began running away, shouting that a monster had appeared. Yuri, however, stood there in confusion, wondering why everyone was panicking so much. Just as the shark lunged toward him, Yuri calmly drew his sword and cut it down in a single slash. The port fell silent. Looking at the scene, Yuri sighed and thought that it had turned into a complete bloody mess. Still, as a result of the incident, he unexpectedly acquired a beginner-level fishing skill. At that moment, Emily and Mayusul arrived at the port. They talked with Yuri for a long time and, in the end, said that they had changed their minds. Choosing a man only by his looks was wrong, and that was when they realized the true charm of a strong man like Yuri. Yuri simply responded with an, "Okay." Emily then asked if Yuri was currently on a quest. Yuri replied that he was. Hearing that, Emily asked whether he would like them to help him. Musel also added that they would do anything for him. Yuri thought for a moment and asked if they could put bait on the fishing hook. Both of them happily agreed. Emily then opened the box she had brought along, saying she had the bait with her. Mayusul leaned in curiously to see what it was. The moment they looked inside, both Emily and Mayusul froze in shock. Inside the box were strange, wriggling earthworms. Letting out a scream, the two of them threw the box into the air and ran away as fast as they could, shouting apologies to Yuri and saying that they suddenly remembered some urgent errands they had to take care of. Yuri stood there, slightly tense and confused, wondering why they had to throw the box on the ground like that. He also felt a little disappointed, thinking that he had finally found companions who might go on a quest with him, only for something to go wrong again. But in the end, he smiled to himself. Everything was still fine for him. The next day, Yuri was sleeping peacefully in the morning when Phil came in and started waking him up. Still half asleep, Yuri asked in confusion what was wrong and why she was waking him up so early. Phil replied that nothing was wrong and asked if he hadn't heard anything about today's training. Yuri looked completely confused, and Phil immediately realized that, as expected, Yuri didn't know about it at all. She explained that new adventurers like them are required to attend training once every month. Yuri then asked what would happen if someone didn't attend the training. Phil started searching through her adventurer's handbook, making Yuri wonder if she always carried it with her. After finding the relevant page, Phil explained that anyone who intentionally avoids the training repeatedly will have their adventurer license revoked. Yuri nodded and said that he understood. After explaining everything, Phil told him that she would head out and asked him to get ready. Yuri asked her to wait for a moment, saying there was one thing he needed to check before leaving. He opened the window again and looked toward the tree where the spy usually stayed to keep watch on him. He felt that he had been in similar situations before, but this time the presence felt different, much more dangerous, with clear killing intent. Without hesitation, Yuri cast a fireball toward the tree. Phil was shocked and immediately asked him what he had just done. Yuri calmly replied that it was nothing, saying there was just a bug on the tree. Meanwhile, Yuri quietly wondered to himself who those people really were. Meanwhile, it was revealed that the attackers were the same anonymous masked group. It became clear that this organization was actively trying to hunt Yuri down. The main leader was surprised that member number 928 had been eliminated so easily. He then asked whether number 230 could hunt Yuri down instead. Member number 230, named Tom, laughed confidently and asked if the leader was joking. He said that there was no way he could lose to a mere human, claiming that such a small fry was no match for him. He added that the pet he had raised with his own hands would easily crush Yuri. The scene then shifted to the courtyard of the Adventurers Guild headquarters, where everyone had gathered for the training session. Suddenly, someone from behind rudely told Yuri to get out of the way. It was a girl wearing cool-looking attire. Everyone around was astonished to see her, while Yuri looked confused and asked the people nearby whether she was really that famous. They were shocked that he didn't know her and explained that she was Aisha, one of the town's top 10 B-rank adventurers. Aisha said that she would take a look at everyone present, but first asked if they knew why she was there at the training camp. No one could answer. Aisha then explained that she wasn't there because they were F-rank trash, but because she had been assigned to train them. In other words, she said she would recycle all the garbage and make them as good as possible. One adventurer angrily told her to shut up, saying that no one would listen to her. He attacked her, claiming that he didn't care who she was, and that even if she was B rank, she was still at the bottom of that rank, so she shouldn't mock others. However, the moment he touched her, Aisha threw him into the air, and he crashed hard onto the ground. Aisha declared that she wasn't backing out and that this was exactly why she was there, to train them in combat and educate them properly. She then ferociously challenged everyone to come at her and fight. All the adventurers present rushed together and attacked her at once. But since Aisha was a B-rank adventurer, she easily crushed all of them using her special sword, which strangely looked more like a rope than a blade. With swift and precise movements, she knocked every adventurer to the ground without breaking a sweat. After defeating everyone, her eyes turned toward Yuri and Phil, who were still standing quietly and hadn't made a move at all. Seeing her approach, Phil nervously said that they hadn't said or done anything wrong. Aisha smiled and replied that they had made the right choice because it wasn't wise to jump in blindly just to test her strength. However, deep down, Yuri didn't like her provoking attitude at all. Aisha then said that she liked their calm behavior, and because of that, she decided she would personally teach both of them sword techniques. She casually asked whether they already knew how to use a sword. Before they could properly respond, Aisha continued, saying that it was fine. She knew they were just holding back because she was a B-rank adventurer. She added that she would acknowledge them and give the two of them special attention during training. Yuri still remained silent, which caught Aisha's attention. With a confident smile, she finally told Yuri and Phil to follow her. Aisha led both of them into the northern forest, and Phil nervously asked if it was okay for her to be there. Aisha looked at her and asked what she meant. Phil explained tensely that she just thought she wasn't doing enough training. Aisha smiled and said it was fine, as most young adventurers in training grow too proud. Her mission was to break that pride. In fact, beginners who cannot see their own limits are the ones most likely to fail, and she had to show them their weaknesses. They finally arrived at an open space with tall trees spread around. Aisha handed iron swords to both of them, and Phil, holding hers, asked confusedly what they were supposed to do. Aisha told them to watch carefully, holding the same sword she gave them, and said she would show an example. She stepped close to a tree, swung her sword with all her strength, and in seconds the tree fell to the ground. Phil gasped, shocked by the power of a B-rank adventurer. Aisha then asked Phil to try the same, but Phil shook her head, saying she could never do it. Aisha nodded and said it was hard at first, but if she kept practicing, by the time she cut the tree, she would reach an intermediate level of sword skill. Phil understood and decided to give it her best try. She swung her sword at the tree again and again, but in the end, she still could not cut it down. Then Aisha turned to Yuri and said it was his turn. Yuri held the sword in his hands, smiling, thinking this was the perfect chance to try his new skill. He knew if he used full strength, the sword might break, so he decided to use only half of his power. Even with half his strength, the tree split into two, and the ground beneath it cracked slightly. Yuri was happy that he completed the task without damaging the weapon. Aisha, however, was completely stunned and shocked. Yuri walked up to her and asked if something was wrong, explaining he only followed her instructions. Aisha replied tensely that he had passed, and that was enough. Yuri felt relieved, glad nothing was wrong. Meanwhile, Phil looked tense and muttered that what he did was definitely not normal. Yuri asked curiously what she meant, but all he had done was exactly what Aisha had shown. Phil stayed silent, still confused and unsure what to say. Aisha announced that the next training would be magic and suddenly asked Yuri sharply for his name. Yuri replied that his name was Yuri. Aisha then asked if he had ever learned magic before. Yuri said no, as he didn't think he had. Hearing this, Aisha smiled and started boasting that, when it comes to the laws of magic, both of them were beginners. Yuri looked confused, wondering if that was really a good thing. Aisha then led them to a mountain area and explained that it was perfect for magic training, as nothing around could catch fire even with powerful spells. She added that, since ancient times, anyone learning sword skills went to the forest, while anyone learning magic went to the mountains. In other words, this place was ideal for their training. Phil said she would write it down in her textbook. Aisha told them to watch carefully, as she would show an example. She stepped forward and said they must start with chanting. After chanting, she cast an advanced fire spell, sending a fire sphere toward the mountain. The spell was so strong that it partially destroyed the mountain. Phil was amazed and tense at the same time. While Phil praised her, Aisha boasted that it was nothing for someone of B-rank adventurer level. Yuri smiled, thinking that compared to other adventurers he had met, Aisha was truly special. Aisha then explained that the most important part of using magic was creativity, and there was no shortcut to improvement. Repetition was the key. Yuri agreed, quietly thinking that in his past life, he had done repetitive practice often. Aisha then asked Yuri to try his best, and not worry if he could not match her power. Yuri said okay, and stepped forward to cast his spell. He also held his sword, which confused Phil, who wondered why he was copying Aisha's actions. Actually, Yuri was trying to imitate her magic, but he ended up casting an even stronger spell, known as Wave Funeral, which destroyed half of the surrounding mountain area. Both Phil and Aisha were completely stunned, realizing Yuri had gained superior class fire magic. Yuri felt happy too, thinking that after using his sword, he had even learned a superclass fire spell, proving that the training truly worked. Suddenly, Yuri heard something rushing toward them. Phil shouted that a landslide was coming. Both Phil and Aisha were scared and hugged each other tightly, but Yuri stayed calm. He used intermediate-level water magic to create an ice wall in front of them. To his shock, the ice wall was destroyed in an instant. Yuri became tense, realizing he had to do something. Aisha urgently told him not to try anything and to run away as fast as he could. Yuri replied that he couldn't because this was a problem he had caused and reassured her that she didn't need to worry. Aisha wondered nervously what Yuri was trying to do, but in reality, he didn't want either of the girls to get hurt. Using his magic powers again, Yuri created a massive ice wall, which easily stopped the landslide. Phil was shocked, and Aisha was tense, wondering how Yuri had done that. Yuri felt happy, knowing he had gained a superclass level of water magic. Phil hugged him joyfully for saving them, while Aisha was still stunned by the power of the ice wall. She finally asked Yuri to tell her who he really was and what exactly he had done. Yuri just smiled in response. A few days later, Yuri visited Pancho's store for the first time in a while. Pancho smiled warmly when he saw Yuri and greeted him cheerfully. Yuri ordered a bullfish carpaccio, which Panther cooked in just a few minutes. It was the fish Yuri had caught on his last quest, so this would be his first time eating it. Panther said that bullfish tasted excellent, but it was hard to handle, so its supply was not stable. Luckily, the price had settled down recently, meaning a good fisherman must have appeared. Panther then mentioned Aisha, saying that it was amazing how she had become part of the training program, and he couldn't believe how quickly time changed. Hearing this, Yuri became curious and asked if Panther knew her. Panther explained that they had seen each other often, and Aisha always had a strong sense of pride. He even joked that he wanted someone to blow her pride away. Suddenly, someone else entered the store, seeing which Panther greeted him warmly, calling him Mr. Rose. The other customers began talking about Rose, asking if he was the famous Rose from the iron ingot. Everyone agreed and praised him, noting how rare it was to see him in person. Rose asked Yuri if he could sit beside him. Yuri agreed immediately. Rose mentioned that he had just returned from an expedition and hadn't eaten in a long time. He ordered Baku's grilled meat, a salad, salami, grilled ring tree skewers, grilled dried fish, and fries with garlic. Yuri quietly wondered how much Rose intended to eat. During the meal, Rose asked Panther about Yuri. Yuri introduced himself, saying his name was Yuri. Rose said he had heard about Yuri from Aisha. Yuri was surprised and asked if Rose knew Aisha personally. Panther, shocked by Yuri's casual tone, shouted, asking if Yuri even knew who Rose really was. Panther explained that the person sitting in front of them was Rose Biscotti, also called the Rose of the Iron Ingot, currently the strongest A-rank adventurer in the city. Rose laughed, saying that was an exaggeration, and then praised Yuri, saying that, just as Aisha had said, Yuri was a good person with a kind heart. He explained that the reason he had sought Yuri out was to ask for his help with a mission. Yuri, confused, asked what mission. Rose replied that it was a dragon extermination mission and asked if Yuri could lend them a hand. Panther was shocked and shouted tensely, saying that it was too much. No matter what Rose said, his brother Yuri was still just an F rank for now. Rose calmly replied that he was serious. Even though he had just met Yuri that day, he was impressed by his strength and thought Yuri's abilities were not far below those of A-rank adventurers. While they continued talking inside, a girl stood outside the shop, listening quietly to their conversation. In the Adventure Guild, everyone seemed tense. President Raka reported that the magicians and medical team had already taken action, and that 5 people were seriously ill. All 5 had not been cursed, but unfortunately, it was too late to save 4 of them. Raka instructed the staff to re-examine the quest thoroughly. He also ordered all quests within 50 kilometers of the West Plateau to be frozen and told nearby villages and towns to be notified immediately. Tiffany arrived, pushing a man in a wheelchair. She introduced him as Captain Lenger, a G-rank adventurer. Raka asked Lenger to explain what had happened. Lenger hesitated, but shakily recounted everything he had seen regarding the dragon. The scene then returned to the present, where Rose was telling Yuri about the events from the previous day. Panther said tensely that if the G-rank adventurer had lost his hands and legs, then what was said must be true. A few years ago, the appearance of evil dragons had begun to change the local monster ecosystem and environment. Low-rank adventurers had struggled, especially in certain hunting grounds, and some battles had started. Rose then smiled and asked Yuri what he thought, saying it would be helpful if Yuri could assist in eliminating the evil dragon. At that moment, the girl who had been listening outside the shop stepped inside. She said she didn't believe it and asked Rose if he had gone insane, questioning whether he really wanted such a weak-looking man to join their party. The girl introduced herself as Chloe Dovel, a dark elf. She scolded Rose, saying he should get his eyes checked because he was asking an F-rank adventurer for help, and that any A-rank adventurer would be laughed at if they tried. Yuri asked curiously who she was. Before Rose could reply, Chloe introduced herself further, saying she was a B-rank adventurer, ranked 3rd, and famous as Twilight Clove. She added that she had also heard about Yuri from Aisha, but she had no idea what tricks he had up his sleeve. She warned him that it was 1,000 years too early for an F-rank to join their party. Rose quickly told Chloe that he had already said adventurers were not all about rank, and it was a bad habit to judge their abilities that way. Chloe picked up a fork and said she had never met a talented F-rank before, so why not play a game for now? She then directly asked Yuri if he wanted to play a game with her. Yuri asked curiously what kind of game it was. Chloe dropped the fork from her hand and reassured him that it wasn't too difficult. She explained that she was using magic on the fork and would send it toward him with 30% of her power. If Yuri managed to return the attack, she would accept him as a teammate. Chloe didn't set any towel on the fork. Yuri asked what would happen if he lost. Chloe responded fiercely that if he failed, he would never have to appear in front of her again, because F-ranks were always F-ranks. She then told him to get ready and threw the fork toward him. The fork came very fast, almost hitting him. Yuri realized it was incredibly quick. Everyone else tensed, but Rose stayed calm, smiling. Suddenly, Chloe's smile disappeared. To her shock, Yuri blocked the fork easily. He had gathered magic like she did and returned the fork toward her, curious how she would respond. The moment the fork came toward her, she managed to dodge, but was stunned by its power, hitting the wall and muttering that it was impossible. Rose smiled and said it looked like the last member of the team had been decided. He asked Chloe if she was okay with it, and she agreed. Rose then asked Yuri what he thought. Deep down, Yuri didn't really want to join, but he realized that refusing an offer from an A-rank adventurer could make life in the city more difficult. He decided to accept. Rose happily said they would meet tomorrow and get rid of the evil dragon. Meanwhile, Panther was tense because his stove had been damaged during the fight. Yuri reassured him not to worry and promised to pay for the damage. The scene shifted to the west gate of the trading city, where Yuri was waiting for the team to arrive. Rose soon appeared with the team, which included Aisha and Chloe. Seeing them, Yuri felt a little tense. 1 A-rank and 2 B-rank adventurers made it a strong party. Rose noticed the slime on Yuri's shoulder and asked if he was bringing it. Yuri replied yes, saying it was his friend. Chloe looked a little impressed, as taming was a very rare skill. On the way, while traveling in a small carriage, Rose apologized for the cramped space and asked everyone to be patient. Yuri felt tense because he was stuck between Aisha and Chloe, who were both throwing minor tantrums, complaining about the tight space. Deep down, Yuri thought that these 2 flowers in front of him were not bad. He could feel their amazing presence. Aisha asked them to squeeze closer, while Chloe told her not to push. Aisha and Chloe began arguing about it. Suddenly, their carriage was attacked. Yuri felt a strange sensation and asked what was happening. He saw a group of wyverns attacking, but realized they were tamed. Someone was controlling them. While Aisha and Chloe fought back with ice cannons and fireballs, the wyverns were quickly defeated. Yuri was amazed at the B-rank adventurers' strength and speed, noting how powerful they were. The wyverns, however, did not give up easily. Rose then ordered Chloe and Yuri to handle the enemies on the left, while he and Aisha would take care of the ones on the right. Yuri asked Chloe if they should defeat the enemies together. Chloe snapped that he shouldn't call her name so casually and said he didn't need to do much. She would handle it, as she hadn't fully acknowledged him yet. She then used beginner-level water magic, firing an ice cannon at the wyverns. To her surprise, the wyverns easily dodged it. She followed up with a frozen rain attack, which finally defeated the wyverns. Chloe then said that it was done. Yuri shook his head and said not yet, as a meteor wyvern was coming to attack them. Chloe didn't seem scared and launched an icicle at the wyvern, but the dragon easily blew it away. Chloe tensed, surprised by its strength. At that moment, Yuri ordered Lime to act. Lime appeared and blocked the dragon's fire attack effortlessly, as if it were nothing. Chloe was completely stunned by Lime's power, thinking it was impossible. Yuri then told Chloe to attack. She used intermediate-level water magic and hurled ice spheres at the meteor wyvern. Her attack missed and only caused a small scratch. To her surprise, Yuri said it wasn't enough. He then began using his grand magic, Impact Diffusion, to attack the wyvern. Actually, Yuri fused his power into his sword and defeated the meteor wyvern with a single slash. When he returned, Chloe was completely stunned and asked tensely what he had done. Yuri replied that he had simply jumped like normal and sliced the flying wyvern, asking if that wasn't normal. Chloe angrily shouted that tearing a wyvern into pieces was not normal at all. When Yuri and Chloe returned to Rose and Aisha, Rose praised them, saying it looked like they were done as well. Yuri saw that Rose and Aisha had defeated twice as many wyverns as he and Chloe had, even taking down 2 meteor wyverns. He realized that both Aisha and Rose were incredibly strong. Rose then said that although they might be in a hurry, there was a problem. If his suspicion was correct, the wyverns had been controlled by someone. Both Aisha and Chloe were stunned, saying it was impossible for anyone to control B-rank monsters. Yuri agreed with Rose, noting that he had felt the same, that the monsters were being manipulated. Rose suggested that perhaps Yuri's taming skill had resonated with the monsters. Yuri confirmed, though deep down he knew it was because he had analyzed their power. Rose added that there was another problem. The earlier attack had almost killed their horses. Aisha agreed, noting that it would take at least 2 hours to walk from there. Yuri thought that he could transform Lime into a cockatrice, but it would be difficult for Lime to carry all 4 of them. Instead, he decided to heal the horses. He asked if he could check their wounds. Rose asked Yuri if he had any idea about the horses, noting that their condition was very serious. Even with Yuri's best effort, Rose thought recovery would be impossible. Chloe told Rose to let Yuri try, saying there was something unusual about him. Yuri then began using intermediate-level holy magic for wound recovery, and within seconds, the horse's injuries were completely healed. Everyone stood there stunned, unable to believe that Yuri had used holy magic, something thought to be just an urban legend. Rose was completely speechless and admitted that he hadn't known Yuri could use holy magic. Yuri confirmed that he could and asked what was wrong. Rose explained that Yuri shouldn't openly use holy magic in public. Yuri remembered that Rico had also been surprised by his holy magic and asked why it was such a big deal. Rose said holy magic was rare and extremely valuable, and using it openly could attract unwanted attention. In the worst case, people might try to capture Yuri's body to use it in war. Therefore, it was best to avoid using that power publicly whenever possible. Yuri smiled and said it didn't matter. If he saw someone injured, no matter where, he would use his magic as many times as needed. Chloe asked tensely how Yuri could be so carefree. Yuri smiled wryly and told her not to ask that again, noting that he had been thinking the same thing. Why was Yuri so strange in the first place? The group started moving forward. On the way, Rose told everyone to hurry, saying the area felt very strange. As they advanced, they saw that the land ahead had been completely destroyed by the dragon, with all life burned away by black flames. Rose told everyone that the horses would stay there and that they would continue on foot, since they didn't know when they might encounter the evil dragon. Everyone agreed and prepared themselves. Along the way, they fought many different beasts and dragons, defeating them one by one. Yuri felt slightly tense for some reason as he watched the battles. Rose explained that these monsters were likely being controlled by the dragon, as their killing intent felt unnatural. Everyone stayed alert and moved carefully. Suddenly, a heavy and violent pressure filled the area. Rose asked nervously what it was, as the pressure felt overwhelming. Moments later, they saw a massive dragon skull shape above them. As the fog cleared, an A-rank skull dragon appeared before them. Rose asked tensely if this was really the evil dragon, as it felt far stronger than expected. Chloe trembled in fear, thinking it couldn't be real. Yuri, however, stood calmly, surprised that Rose was this frightened by a dragon that didn't seem very strong to him. He wondered if even A-rank adventurers could fear such a creature. Rose ordered everyone to prepare for battle, warning that this fight would be troublesome. The dragon suddenly unleashed a loud roar toward Rose. Everyone flinched from the impact. When Yuri analyzed it, he realized it was an attack called howling, which stunned creatures of lower rank than the user. New adventurers would faint instantly after hearing it. While Yuri was analyzing, Rose asked tensely what that attack was, and Chloe said she couldn't move her body. Yuri felt confused, as he believed they should still be able to move. Suddenly, another voice echoed from the mountain above, laughing and mocking them. The voice said that adventurers these days were weak, but it was amusing that they had actually come to face him. The speaker revealed himself as a demon named Zark Potenov. Zark addressed Yuri directly, calling him number 926 or 928. saying it didn't matter, but Yuri looked like the weakest among them. When Yuri heard the number, he remembered Nero and realized they were part of the numbered group. Zark laughed, saying that now he could have some fun with this loop. He then decided to erase the unnecessary people first and ordered his dragon to attack Rose and the others. Everyone grew tense, unsure of what to do, as their bodies refused to move. Just as the dragon's tail swung down to strike them, Yuri stepped in front and blocked the attack. He immediately used grand magic to increase his agility and defense, then charged at the dragon. His strike injured the dragon, but it was not enough to defeat it. Yuri followed up, slashing the dragon again and again until it finally fell. Zark praised Yuri for killing a dragon despite being human and suggested they begin round 2. With a snap of his fingers, another dragon appeared out of nowhere and attacked Yuri. Without hesitation, Yuri fought back against the new dragon. Yuri studied the dragon closely and realized that an evil dragon was something that did not truly die because it was already dead. He began thinking about what he should do next. On the other side, Rose asked if Chloe and Aisha could move now. Chloe replied that she could, but only a little. Rose warned that it was still dangerous and told them to recover their strength first. Before they could do so, the dragon used howling again, sending a powerful shock through them. Yuri tensed and immediately used holy healing magic on them. The dragon reacted to the holy magic, which surprised Yuri. He suddenly remembered that the same thing happened with undead and ghosts. Realizing this, he used advanced level holy magic and attacked the dragon directly. Within minutes, the dragon shattered into ashes. Yuri smiled, relieved that it had worked. Zark laughed again, praising Yuri for cleverly using healing magic. He then asked mockingly if they should begin round 3 now. This time, Zark himself came down and told Yuri to begin round 3. When Yuri glared at him fiercely, Zark laughed and told him not to make such a scary face. He said he was actually very happy because humans these days were not even a bother. That was why seeing an adventurer like Yuri made him excited, and now he wanted to kill him. As Yuri dodged his attacks, he realized that Zark was extremely powerful, but his speed was slow. He thought that defeating Nero would be far harder than this. However, Yuri grew tense when he saw Zark shatter the ground with a single punch. The destructive power was terrifying. As soon as Yuri landed, Zark attacked from behind, warning him not to take his eyes off him. Yuri dodged again, but the force of the attack sent rocks flying into the air. Yuri realized that even getting close was dangerous, as the wind pressure alone could throw him away. It felt like lost magic or something similar. Zark laughed and asked what was wrong, mocking Yuri for only dodging. He attacked again, but this time aimed for Rose and the others, saying Yuri wouldn't be able to dodge now. Yuri activated Muscle Strength Increase Level 3 and Shock Diffusion Increase Level 3. Their punches collided, causing a massive explosion around them. Zark praised Yuri, saying he was impressive and evenly matched in raw strength, though Zark still had a slight advantage. Yuri felt exhausted and wondered what kind of demon Zark was, as even triple grand magic wasn't enough. Yuri told Lime to take everyone to a safe place. While he was giving the order, Zark attacked again. Yuri barely dodged and realized that fighting Zark head-on left no openings. He decided to aim for Zark's back instead. When Yuri struck with his sword, it failed to pierce Zark's body. He realized how tough Zark was, but it was already too late. Zark seized the opening and punched Yuri violently into the wall. Zark laughed and said that he could easily endure those attacks. He added that he still wasn't satisfied with the fight. Hearing this, Yuri became serious. He began using beginner-level holy magic on himself, but the healing was slow. He realized that he had consumed a huge amount of mana today and needed to learn how to use it more wisely. Zark shouted at Yuri, asking what was wrong and whether the battle was already over. Yuri then changed his method and used healing magic in another way, realizing that this was his only chance to face Zark head-on. Zark charged at him with full power. Yuri dodged and thought about how holy swordsman magic used to be different in the past. There was once nothing it couldn't break. Yuri understood what he needed to do. He focused on controlling his legs and moving his entire body together. He increased his strength, activated slashing enhancement, and applied shock diffusion. In a split second, he released a deep, precise holy blade. To Zark's shock, his arm was cut off with ease. Furious, Zark shouted that it was impossible. Even if Yuri was human, he should not have been able to cut his arm. Then Zark suddenly went silent and said tensely that he had seen that move before. He said that Yuri was exactly the same as him from long ago. Yuri felt confused and wondered who Zark was talking about. Zark clicked his fingers again and summoned a dragon in front of him. Laughing, he said the fight had been fun, but Yuri would pay for what he had done. With that, Zark mounted the dragon and began to escape. Yuri tried to stop him with magic, but Zark told him to forget it for now. However, Zark suddenly looked back in confusion. In the next instant, Yuri unleashed a light fire magic called Inferno, severely injuring him. Exhausted, Yuri finally relaxed. He thought it would be strange if he weren't tired after all that, but at least the mission was complete. He decided to rest until everyone wakes up. When everyone woke up, Rose asked in confusion where they were. Yuri walked over to them and happily said that it looked like everyone was finally awake. After talking for a while, they all became stunned and nervously asked whether Yuri had really defeated the Skull Dragon. Yuri replied with a yes, which made Rose say that it was unbelievable, as the Skull Dragon was an S-rank monster. Hearing this, Yuri wondered tensely whether it was truly supposed to be that strong, or if it had disappeared so easily only because he used advanced holy magic. Yuri then used intermediate storage magic and took out an extra large dark magic stone in front of them. He asked how they should split it into 4 since it was a magic stone. Rose said he was shocked, as he had never seen a magic stone of such high quality before. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be right for them to take it. He told Yuri to keep the magic stone. Chloe and Aisha agreed, but warned him to be careful, as that magic stone might hold enough power to destroy an entire country. Yuri thought it wouldn't be a problem, as he planned to either sell it or feed it to Lime. With that, the adventurers returned to report the completion of their quest. However, something strange happened the very next day. When Yuri woke up in the morning, he felt the floor was hard and cold. He wondered where Lime had gone, since he thought he had been sleeping on top of Lime. Suddenly, he noticed a cute little girl sleeping beside him. He was stunned and nervously wondered who she was. The moment the girl woke up, she jumped toward Yuri and hugged him tightly. From her voice, strength, and scent, Yuri immediately realized that it was Lime and asked in disbelief if it was really her. The girl nodded and replied yes. Yuri stared at her in confusion, wondering why Lime looked like that. Just then, he noticed that the magic stone he had left on the table was gone. He asked if Lime had eaten the magic stone. Lime happily answered yes. Yuri was shocked, thinking that Lime becoming a humanoid just by eating the magic stone was truly astonishing. Lime tried to greet him with a cheerful good morning. She then asked him to watch her and attempted to stand up, but immediately fell to the ground. Yuri had expected this, as her body was still unstable. He thought that taking her into battle might not be a bad idea, but the question was whether she should be taken everywhere in human form. He told Lime that there was no need to copy humans, as she had her own strengths. Hearing this, Lime transformed back into her original slime form. Yuri smiled and said, "Let's keep moving, partner." Yuri was at the 2D Adventurers Guild and was looking for quests to take, but the only quests he could see were Goblin Subjugation or World Subjugation. Suddenly, a person on the balcony shouted Yuri's name and jumped down to the ground. Yuri calmly asked if the guy needed something. The boy then asked if Yuri could give him 30 seconds. Yuri replied yes, and also noticed that the boy hurt his legs while jumping from the balcony. The boy then said that his name was Dutch and that he was the 8th place C-rank adventurer, and people called him the rare monster hunter Dutch. Yuri wondered in confusion who this old man was and whether 8th place C-rank was really that impressive. Dutch then said that he had a partner named Leomon, who was a mouse. When Yuri saw Leomon, he was surprised that Leomon could understand human words and might be smart like Lime. Dutch then asked if Yuri was searching for a quest. Yuri answered yes, so Dutch asked why Yuri should not work for him for the day. Since Yuri looked new, he explained that not all quests were posted on the board, as this was his personal quest, and he said this job was risky but promised fair pay afterward for Yuri alone today. Yuri did not really like the idea of getting hired, but since there were no good quests on the board, he decided to give it a try. So he replied that in that case, he would accept the offer for today. Dutch laughed and said that he knew Yuri would agree, and then told him to make sure to keep him safe as well. On the way, Yuri and Dutch chatted, and Yuri shared some things about himself. Dutch smiled and said that Yuri had really become adventurous, which was nice to see. Yuri replied yes, saying that he had learned many things he did not know before, so if Dutch could teach him some things, it would be great. Dutch agreed and told Yuri that he could ask him anything, as he would teach whatever Yuri wanted to learn. Yuri noticed that Lime and Leomon were getting along very well. At that moment, Dutch asked why Yuri had a slime as a partner, since it was a normal slime species, right? Yuri asked in confusion whether there were other types of slimes. Dutch replied yes, explaining that blue slimes were the weakest among monsters and that no one usually formed a contract with a slime. He then added that Yuri should consider forming a contract with another monster and asked if Yuri wanted him to introduce a good one. Yuri thought about it for a moment, then looked at Lime and replied no, saying that there was no need for that. Even if Lime looked like this, she was very useful to him. Dutch laughed and said that Yuri could not lie at all. Yuri seriously replied that he was not lying. Dutch laughed again and said that if he ever got saved by a slime, he would fail as a monster hunter and would have to take down his precious monster hunter sign. Suddenly, the carriage rod broke, and they were about to fall to the ground. Yuri quickly asked Lime to act, and to their surprise, they were all saved by Lime's fluffy body. Yuri asked if Dutch was okay. Dutch, still tense, asked what was going on, saying that he had never heard of a slime becoming this huge. He then nervously asked Yuri if he really had a contract with a normal slime. Yuri replied by reminding him that Dutch himself said blue slimes were the weakest. Dutch, completely shocked, answered yes, saying that it was true, but it was still unbelievable. Yuri then asked Dutch to explain the details of the quest. Dutch replied that they had to go to Dragon Valley. Yuri asked in confusion what Dragon Valley was. Dutch explained that it was the holy land for tamers. Every tamer dreams of having a dragon with great strength and a dignified presence, and since many dragons gather there, the place came to be known as a holy land. Yuri then asked why taming a dragon was so important. Dutch replied that taming a dragon was every man's romance. That was why he wanted Yuri's help on a quest to capture a baby dragon. Yuri said that it sounded interesting. Dutch agreed, but added that it was a dangerous job. However, Yuri did not need to worry because everything had been planned carefully. He explained that the dragons were currently in their birth season, so they were weakened and did not even have half of their original power. On top of that, with his wide network, they could sell a baby dragon at the highest price. Yuri was happy to hear all this information and praised Dutch for his knowledge. Dutch felt pleased and said that Yuri seemed like a promising tamer, so he would make a special case for him and share his heroic tales. As they traveled, Dutch kept talking about his many successes and how he became known across the country. Before he knew it, people had started calling him the rare monster hunter of the exile. Yuri also said that being able to adventure together with such a great person was an honor for him. Dutch happily thanked Yuri for the praise, but suddenly Yuri asked why Dutch was still only an 8th place C-rank adventurer even after achieving so many great feats. Dutch's expression turned fierce, and he replied tensely that truly capable people were often underappreciated by the public. He guessed that this era simply could not keep up with his greatness. With that, they continued their journey and finally arrived at their destination, Dragon Valley. In front of them stood several steep cliffs. Dutch explained that to reach the dragons, they would need to climb those cliffs. Yuri asked how they were supposed to do that. Dutch replied that this was where Leoman would shine. Leoman was tied with a thread and began climbing the cliff with ease. After reaching the top, Leoman secured the rope to a stone, allowing them to climb up safely. Yuri was amazed by the sight and realized how perfectly coordinated they were. He also thought that he should learn from this kind of teamwork. After finally reaching the top and walking for a while, Yuri noticed something and asked Dutch if he was okay, since he had been walking for quite some time. Dutch replied yes, saying he was still fine. Yuri asked again if he really did not need to rest, but Dutch shook his head and said no, they should hurry. On the way, they ran into a group of kobolds. Dutch explained that kobolds were usually docile monsters that could get along easily with humans, making them the best target practice before facing dragons. Hearing this, Yuri felt confused. If kobolds really got along with humans, then why did they feel so hostile? Dutch then told Yuri to wait and watch, saying he would show him how a senior adventurer handled things. He explained that there were two main ways to tame a monster. The first was to make it surrender, and the second was to use food to build a friendly relationship. Hearing this, Yuri realized that he had used the same method when he tamed Lime with dried meat. Saying this, Dutch took out a special dango he had gotten from work the previous night. The moment it appeared, both Yuri and Lime tensed up. The dango looked extremely nasty and gave off a strong, putrid smell. Dutch smiled confidently, believing that the kobolds would never be able to resist it. He walked toward them and greeted the kobolds, holding out the dango and asking if they wanted to eat it. However, instead of calming down, the kobolds suddenly became aggressive and rushed at Dutch. Shocked, Dutch panicked and called out for help. At that moment, Yuri stepped forward and blocked all of the kobolds' attacks. He quickly realized that they were unexpectedly fast, leaving him no choice but to use magic. Yuri released his magic aura, and instantly the kobolds froze in fear. Wild monsters could instinctively sense the power of their opponent, and once they realized the overwhelming difference, their will to fight collapsed. Yuri then told Lime to stop their movements. Lime attacked at once, and the kobolds were defeated easily. Yuri captured all the kobolds with the help of Lime, and then asked Dutch if this was a good way to capture them. Dutch replied tensely that yes, it was. After being captured, the kobolds tried to say something. Seeing this, Yuri told Dutch that it looked like the kobolds had been chased out of their habitat by dragons, and that there seemed to be a dragon nest further up the cliff. Dutch looked confused. Yuri then added that one of the kobolds was asking whether they wanted to be guided to the nest. Dutch was shocked and asked if Yuri could actually understand what the monsters were saying. Yuri replied, yes. Dutch was completely stunned and said it was unbelievable because he had heard that only highly skilled tamers could understand the language of monsters, but he never expected Yuri to be one of them. Yuri then curiously asked if Dutch could not understand monster language. Dutch became tense and did not know what to say. Still, he boasted that Yuri should not underestimate him, because if he could not understand monster language, he would never call himself a real monster hunter. Yuri believed him and thought that Dutch was truly amazing. Meanwhile, one of the kobolds said something again, so Yuri asked the kobold to lead them the way. Even after that, Dutch kept pretending that he understood what the kobolds were saying, but he kept mistaking the routes and directions. The kobold started showing them the way. Along the way, Yuri decided to give the kobold a name, so he called him Wankichi. Hearing this, Dutch made a strange sound, so Yuri asked if the name sounded bad. Dutch replied that Yuri did have a unique naming sense, but since the kobold seemed happy with the name, it was fine in the end. Yuri then finalized the name Wankichi, and the kobold became happy and excited. Suddenly, Wankichi jumped into a narrow path. When they reached it, Dutch was stunned to see a very large hole beside the path. They became tense and started moving very slowly. In the middle of the path, Dutch's foot slipped from the cliff and he fell into the hole, shouting that he was going to die. Lehman immediately jumped after Dutch to save him. Just in time, Lime helped by stretching out like a rope, and finally both Dutch and Lehman were saved. Dutch was completely terrified and said that his life had just flashed before his eyes. He repeatedly thanked both Lehman and Lime for saving him. After that, they moved forward again and were almost at the peak. Suddenly, Wankichi started acting strange, so they rushed toward him and asked what was wrong. They were surprised to see a huge boulder blocking the path. Dutch became tense and said that there was no other route besides this one, and if they turned back, they would have to cross the cliff again. Since it had come to this, Dutch said he had no choice but to use his trump card. Yuri was confused about what Dutch was going to do. Dutch told Yuri to watch and learn, saying this was his trump card. Dutch then used a special item, and a golem was summoned. Seeing this, Yuri remembered that it was a technique he had used frequently in his past life as a magic emperor, and he recalled that it was called summoning magic. Dutch ordered the golem to move the boulder, but even the golem could not move it. Dutch then started helping the golem himself, and asked Yuri to help as well, saying that there was not enough power. Yuri agreed. He took out his sword and told Dutch to step back, warning him that it might get dangerous. Dutch was confused when he saw Yuri drawing a sword and asked what he was planning to do. Suddenly, Yuri used his power and slashed the boulder into 2 pieces. Dutch was completely stunned and asked what on earth had just happened and how a tamer could use a sword. He said it was impossible, as he had never heard of a tamer swordsman before, since people usually focus on only one class in their entire life. Hearing this, Yuri remembered that Pancho had also said it was very hard to learn multiple skills in one lifetime. Unfortunately, that rule did not apply to Yuri, who was living his 3rd life and could learn skills easily because he retained the memories of his previous lives. They finally reached their destination, which was the Dragon Den. Dutch looked at the cave and said that he thought this was the cave they were looking for. Before going inside, he told Yuri that they should rest for a while, as he thought his milk and sugar were in his pocket. However, at that moment, Yuri felt someone's presence coming from inside the cave, so he told Dutch that someone was inside. Dutch was surprised to hear that someone could be in a place like this. When that person came out, Yuri was surprised to see that it was Aisha. Dutch was shocked to see Aisha there, but Yuri stayed very calm. Aisha greeted Yuri and said that it had been a while since she last saw him after the previous quest. Yuri asked if she was exterminating dragons. Aisha looked confused and asked why she would exterminate dragons. Yuri replied that he thought she was hunting powerful dragons, since a B-rank adventurer was on this mountain. Aisha denied it and said she was here for a different reason, and it was actually the opposite. Yuri looked confused and asked what she meant. Aisha explained that she had come to stop people who were illegally hunting dragons. Yuri listened carefully. Aisha said that every part of a dragon has value, including its bones and skin, not only for swords and armor, but also for many kinds of medicines. Because of this, the guild had placed many restrictions on dragon-related quests. That was why senior adventurers like her were patrolling dragon areas like this. Suddenly, Aisha looked sharply at Dutch and asked if he was an illegal dragon hunter. Dutch became angry and quickly showed his license, saying that he was a proper adventurer. Aisha looked at it closely and then asked if he was the braggart Dutch, ranked 30th among C-rank adventurers. Dutch became tense after hearing that. Yuri also looked confused and asked what she meant by that. Aisha explained that the old man was famous for telling exaggerated stories to newcomers and using them as tools. She said he was a troublemaker who had reached C rank by taking advantage of inexperienced adventurers. Yuri realized that Dutch's heroic stories sounded too well made and did not feel real at all, so Dutch had been bluffing the whole time. Still, Yuri asked if Dutch had not said that he was an 8th place C rank adventurer. Yuri then asked if he had really been pretending all along. Dutch stood there silently without saying anything. Yuri felt tense and wondered why Dutch did not make a better lie if he was lying anyway. Dutch suddenly bowed deeply in front of them and said that he had done some suspicious things before, but he had truly turned over a new leaf. He swore that he had not done anything illegal. He kept bowing and begged them to believe him. Even Leoman bowed down beside him. Aisha then asked Yuri whether he thought this old man Dutch could be trusted. Yuri was about to reply, but suddenly both Yuri and Aisha felt that something was wrong. Aisha said that it would be better to save the talk for later. Yuri agreed with her, while Dutch looked very confused and did not understand what was happening. In truth, they were being surrounded, and Yuri realized that the enemies were probably the illegal dragon hunters Aisha had mentioned earlier. The boulder blocking the road was likely their work as well. Aisha asked if she could leave the right side to Yuri while she handled the other side. Yuri apologized for interrupting her and asked if she could leave all the illegal hunters to him, as he wanted to test something. Yuri bit his finger and began writing symbols with his blood on a rock. Seeing this, Dutch became tense, realizing what Yuri was doing. Suddenly, Yuri summoned dead kobolds. Dutch was completely shocked to see Yuri summon multiple kobolds at the same time. He was even more surprised to see Wankichi among them. On Yuri's command, the kobolds began searching for the enemies, sensing suspicious people nearby. Within seconds, the kobolds started hunting down the illegal adventurers. Yuri was surprised because the kobolds were far stronger than before. He wondered if kobolds were not supposed to be small D-rank monsters. When the enemy hunters began retreating, Yuri told the kobolds not to chase them further. Aisha then came closer to Yuri and asked what was wrong with the strength of those monsters. Just by their movements, each one looked like a C-rank monster, or possibly even as strong as a B-rank monster. Dutch said that he had heard there were cases where monsters contracted by a tamer could gain a part of the tamer's power. Dutch tried to ask Yuri something, but suddenly he got scared and stopped himself. Yuri asked if Dutch wanted to say something. Dutch replied no and said never mind. He then added that, as expected of his best disciple, he felt very proud of him. The scene then shifted to the inside of a cave, where a man named Angus was calmly eating his food. The adventurers who had attacked Yuri and the others came to him and reported that B-rank Aisha and some newcomers were at the site. Angus asked if all of it was done by that woman. The man replied that it was not, and said the wounds were caused by an F-rank adventurer named Aizawa Yuri. Angus became furious after hearing that they were beaten by an F-rank adventurer. The man tried to explain and make excuses, but Angus stepped close and started beating him. He shouted that letting a worthless F-rank outplay them was unforgivable. The man said that he was relieved Aisha was there, as she was someone who would never betray her friends. However, Yuri was different from her, and now, a hateful and powerful man had set his sights on Yuri.